This is Atomic Shinobi and today I am going to narrate first part of what if Naruto is protected by Fem-Kyuubi because of 700-year oath. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
On April 12, at 2,305 hours, Konoha forests, a young boy was seen racing through the forests that surrounded the village hidden in the leaves, Konoha, as quickly as his legs would allow. A few distinctive characteristics of this boy in particular were his sun-colored blonde hair, crystal blue eyes, bright orange jumpsuit, distinctive whisker, like birthmarks on his cheeks, and the rather large scroll he was carrying on his back. He paused in a clearing, and his thoughts turned to what had happened earlier that day that had brought him there in the first place. Flashback. Konoha Ninja Academy. 8 hours ago Naruto sat on a swing in the academy courtyard, dejected and alone. He was forced to watch his classmates celebrate with their families after failing the graduation exam for the third time. A few of the parents started talking after noticing that he was staring at them. Good thing that little beast failed. What were they thinking, letting him into the academy? I know. Why didn't the Sandame just kill that thing when he had the chance? Naruto was done listening. When Mizuki stopped him, he marched angrily back to the classroom to gather what little he had left. Mizuki revealed to Naruto a covert method of becoming a genin. Steal the forbidden scroll from the Hokage's office and deliver it to him covertly. Seizing the chance, Naruto headed to his apartment to prepare for his alleged test. The cruel smirk on Mizuki's face as he walked away was something he overlooked. End of flashback. While he waited, he shook himself out of those thoughts and began studying the first jutsu on the scroll. Iruka ran frantically toward Naruto's chakra signature in a nearby area of the forest. Naruto, damn it. Why did you do this? He pondered. He discovered the clearing where Naruto was sitting after a few more minutes had passed. Naruto confronted him and explained to him what Mizuki had instructed him to do to become a genin. Mizuki decided to reveal himself at that time. He started berating Naruto after he was certain that his true motivations had been discovered, and he veered off topic to talk about the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He violated one of the village's strictest laws, the one pertaining to the Kyuubi and its vessel. During his tirade, death on the spot was the penalty for breaking the law. I am the Kyuubi's vessel, and thus the Kyuubi itself, he informed Naruto. Iruka yelled, Naruto, don't listen to him. Iruka and Mizuki then started fighting over the scroll. Mizuki killed Naruto by throwing one of his enormous shuriken at him after Iruka had him run away with the scroll back to the village. Iruka took the blow for him by lying in front of the projectile. The silver-haired traitor closed in to kill the scarred Chunin as he started to tell him, Naruto, you're not the Kyuubi. I know you well. Enough for that. He sped forward, but Naruto caught him with a powerful kick to the jaw, sending him flying back into a tree. When Mizuki looked up, Naruto was staring at him with a glare that was almost demonic. Naruto yelled in an unearthly voice, I'll kill you, if you touched Iruka, sensei. Mizuki started to laugh, then burst out laughing. You kill me? You pathetic little demon, I'll kill you in one shot? With the new jutsu he had learned from the Forbidden Scroll, Naruto wasted no time in filling the forest clearing with hundreds of Kage Bunshin, all of whom were glaring at him. Mizuki gazed in shock and terror at the Orange Army. They all yelled at once, what's wrong, Teme? Weren't you going to kill me? 12 years of repressed rage and frustration were released when the Naruto Legion swooped down on the frightened traitor and beat the living daylights out of him. If you won't fight, then I will, they yelled. Iruka called Naruto over after he had finished dealing with the traitor. Naruto obeyed. Naruto, close your eyes for a moment. Okay, now open them. Naruto sensed a weight pressing against his forehead. He was wearing a Konoha headband now. As they returned to Hokage Tower to brief the Hokage, he said to him, congratulations, Naruto. You've earned it. A fourth individual, concealed in a nearby tree on the edge of the clearing, had observed the entire event but had gone unnoticed by the two. The girl in question had pale eyes that gleamed in the moonlight. Not because her eyes were special, but rather because they were moist with tears. Tears shed for the person she loved most. What did we do? Instead of being despised, he ought to have been viewed as a hero for his life's work. Hold on, was my father involved in his demise? Hours Hokage Tower 0106. After returning to Hokage Tower, Iruka and Naruto debriefed Sarutobi. Naruto received a B-rank mission for apprehending a traitor in addition to being promoted to genin. But now that he knew about the Kyuubi no Kitsune that was sealed inside of him, Naruto was a little miffed that something so important had been withheld from him. What the hell? Why didn't you tell me, old man? This stupid fox was sealed in ME. Damn it, was I too stupid or something? Didn't you trust me? Or were you just like the others, viewing me as a monster? Answer me. He screamed, tears starting to come out of his gaze. One of the few people he felt secure and trusted betrayed him. Since the Yondaimi's death and his forced return from retirement, Sarutobi has never felt his age so strongly. Naruto. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you and wanted you to lead a normal life. The Yondaimi wanted you to be seen as a hero, but... well, we all know how that turned out, don't we? Naruto, please. Try to understand. After you were born and the Kyuubi was sealed into you, the people of the village, both civilian and shinobi alike, were angry and upset that they lost their loved ones and their beloved leader all in the same night. Many called for your death, and still do. That night I made a law, that no one was to ever speak of the demon or of its jailer. This was done in order to protect you and hopefully help you make some friends, but they got their kids to hate me, just like them, right? Fat lot of good that law did. First, the orphanage kicked me to the curb at 4 years old. After living on the streets for a year, you finally found me. Then, I was shoved into that crap shack that gets looted and or trashed every birthday or whenever they were in the mood. Was all of that done to protect me, too? Naruto began to cry, his tears now flowing as freely as his grief and rage. A dazzling white light swept across the tower from the heavens above as the little blonde's fury reached its peak. Everyone in the office, visible and invisible, hurried to the roof to witness the event. A beam of light descended in front of them as they struck the rooftop, striking the tower roof with such force that it left a man-sized crater in its wake, with a person lying in the center of it holding a sword. As the small group of people approached, they saw that this enigmatic individual was barely breathing and had multiple serious wounds. The man was tall and had bright blonde hair, and he was probably in his early 20s. He tried to stand but fell to the ground in a pile of blood. After examining him closely, Naruto saw that the stranger resembled him exactly, minus the whiskers and the age difference. Why does this guy look so much like me? Who is he? Something flickered to life inside of him, and he thought. Surprisingly soft and female, the voice said longingly, could it be? It is really him? After so long? Over 700 years too long? What was that? A sharp look from the Hokage jolted Naruto out of his reverie. No one is to breathe a word of this. If word got out, spies from all corners of the world would begin to flock here and start sniffing about. I will not have that happening, is that clear? Iruka just straightened up before responding. Of course, Hokage-sama. After a brief period of silence, Naruto asked the elderly shinobi, with a frown that should never have been on his face, sure. But don't think for a moment that we're finished, old man. I've still got more questions for you, but those can wait for now. As Sarutobi considered his options, they both departed the building, headed for their separate locations. Tora, take him to the hospital at once. I will follow as soon as I am done here. The Anbu in the tiger mask gave a brief salute. He wheeled around and loaded the blonde man onto his shoulder, exclaiming, at once, Hokage-sama. As he was sent to the hospital, he complained, oof, he didn't look that heavy. The elderly Hokage looked at his remaining Anbu. As they all got to work, he gave the order, repair the damage and clean up the blood. Remove any evidence of what just happened. I need to go to the hospital now. He looked at the Yondaimi's head on the Hokage monument and thought, I have to find out exactly what happened and who that young man is. And why he looks like Naruto. Minato, I feel like I've let you down. The sacrifice that you and your son have made has essentially been spit on by this village. I was unable to explain things to them and shield the poor boy from the ignorance and hostility of this village. I now worry that Naruto will never again have faith in this village or in me. The sweet, joyful, and smiling youngster I knew is no longer with me. Naruto, how can I ever make up for the poor decisions that cost you so much? 0400 hours on April 13th at Konoha Hospital in one recovery room, both doctors and medic nins were assembled, staring in wonder at the patient who had been dropped off by one of the Anbu at the Hokage's request. The enigmatic young man was brought in slowly dying from severe mortal wounds. However, the wounds started to heal, apparently on their own, a few seconds before they began to treat him. As though he were simply sleeping, his vitals, which had previously been weak and erratic, were now strong and stable. To see how this was even possible, a scanning jutsu was employed, but the final findings were not conclusive. They did find out that he had an incredible chakra capacity. I've never seen so much chakra in a person in my life, said one of the medics. The Hokage entered a few moments ago, and the doctor who was in charge of his medical care had just finished briefing him. And ever since, he's just been sleeping peacefully, recovering. Sarutobi was analyzing what he had just been told. His rate of recovery is simply amazing. He said to himself, I must know more. Only Naruto or other Jinchuriki like him have ever healed that quickly. He turned to the Anbu guard closest to him. Go and fetch Inoichi Yamanaka immediately. Tell him this is urgent, highly urgent. The concerned Anbu jerked to attention and gave a salute. Then he began the task that had been given to him. Inoichi was briefed on the situation in front of the Hokage 30 minutes later. Let me get this straight, you want me to take a peek in his head while he's out and see who he is and why he's here. He started to get ready when Sarutobi told him, that's about the long and short of it, yes. If you sense any hostility, pull out at once and we will find other means. While you are in there, I've got my own suspicions to confirm. Inoichi used his clan's signature jutsu after pulling a chair up to the blonde stranger's bedside. The mindscape of the stranger when Inoichi opened his eyes, the jutsu had worked. He discovered himself in a long, dimly lit hallway that seemed to go on forever and was lined with heavy-looking wooden doors. His thoughts and mind appeared to be reasonably structured. I think I should try a door, he thought as he turned the knob on the first door he came across, pulled it open, and entered. The decorum inside the room was similar to that of a planning or meeting room. Comfortable chairs were arranged around a sizable wooden table. A projector was seated at the foot of the table. A white projection screen was mounted on the wall in front of it. After flipping the switch, Inoichi sat down and started watching the reel. From the content, these must be his memories. He saw a stunning young woman with red hair who was the same age as his subject appear. However, he reacted with surprise. You mean Kei Kushina Uzumaki? After a moment of frantic thought, he recognized that this girl was considerably younger than the person he was considering. Even so, the similarity is pretty striking. I firmly believe that she was either her twin sister or daughter. Ichigo-kun. Come on, let's go, she exclaimed with a laugh as she dragged the boy along. His name is Ichigo, which is intriguing. These must all be some of his more pleasant recollections. After observing more of his memories, the mind jutsu expert came to the conclusion that he seemed like a good young man. He witnessed the young man's combat prowess this time. Until he asserted himself with a little more authority, he battled against strange creatures that refused to die and what appeared to be mechanical golems. Inoichi was taken aback. Ichigo had literally commanded the water in the air and the wind to attack his adversaries. What was that? A number of dragons composed of both elements roared to life as they launched themselves in all directions into his enemies, tearing them apart with unsettling ease. Jutsu by Sweden and Futon without hand seals. It seems as though he owns those elements and they are doing as he commands. Fantastic. Inoichi then watched Ichigo fight with a great deal of power and skill in taijutsu, using a variety of styles, some of which he had never seen before, as if this were a demonstration of his abilities. Most of the time, the young blonde was just a blur because of how fast he moved. At last, the projector stopped. What is this young man? How strong is he, and where were all these locations I saw? A voice abruptly came from the doorway, asking, who are you? How come you're in my mind? The caller's voice sounded more perplexed than anything else. The senior Yamanaka, who was at a loss because this was the first time he had been mentally confronted in this way, turned around to find the very person whose mind he was wandering in, and he used the opportunity to introduce himself. I'm Inoichi Yamanaka, a shinobi from Konoha, which is where you are right now. Specifically, Ichigo-san, the hospital there. Any scrape you were in left you with severe, potentially fatal injuries. However, your body managed to heal them in a flash. The leader of our village asked me to look inside your head for information and to see if you posed a threat because of the peculiar circumstances surrounding your arrival and your extraordinary speed of recovery. You did, didn't you? You saw me fight, then? I did, indeed. I have to admit that I was quite impressed. Not since the Neodaime have you possessed such elemental mastery over water. Our own taijutsu expert would find it difficult to match your skill, especially given how young you are. Ichigo appeared stunned. Was he not afraid? Did he not view him as a monster, as so many others did to Shina and himself? Aren't you afraid? Inoichi had a disbelieving expression. Why? You clearly have no malicious intent against us. Actually, I want you to talk to our leader. He would probably offer you a place in our village with your girlfriend. Where is she now? Did you spot a young lady with deep green eyes and red hair? No. You were the only one we found, Inoichi said with a regretful expression. Let's return to the question at hand. Ichigo appeared dejected as the space surrounding them vanished and a war-torn metropolis of some kind emerged. Flashback: Ichigo stood in the middle of the ruins of the town where he and Shina had been staying. A once calm German town had been destroyed by the chimeras and mech soldiers who had been pursuing them since they had escaped from the Erebus labs. He had instructed Sheena to hide while he bought her enough time to flee because she had been hurt in a previous battle and didn't recover as quickly as he did. As he started to fight back, he had a strange blade that functioned as a whip at his disposal, and while many of his enemies were defeated by his elemental powers and blade, more continued to be defeated. As he dispatched another chimera, he growled, "Time to kick this up a notch. They aren't playing around this time. The Illuminati wants us destroyed and they don't care who or what gets in their way." The weather actually worked in his favor because it was raining, which gave him an abundance of water to work with. In order to reduce the number, he started slinging water and wind projectiles in all directions in different shapes and sizes. "No. I can't let them get her. I love her," he thought as he prepared to use the last of his strength in a desperate last stand that most likely would have killed him. He was wearing down and his injuries were taking their toll after an hour of non-stop fighting as the Illuminati's forces closed in for the kill. Suddenly, a huge fox dropped in front of the weaker Ichigo, draping some of its 9 tails around him for protection, and blew the remaining enemy forces away with a powerful sweep of its remaining tails. A loud roar startled everyone in the area. A young woman with fiery red hair rode in the snout of the magnificent beast. "Ichigo. Kun. You are a living thing." With a cry of relief, she leapt down to embrace him tightly. "She saved me and brought me here to you," she said, gesturing to the enormous fox. His eyes were full of gratitude as he gazed at it. "Thank you, Sake. Her life was saved by you. I owe you money." "No. I haven't even started to repay the debt that myself and the rest of my kind owe to the two of you," the giant fox said in a very gentle and, surprisingly, female voice. With unmistakable mischievousness in her voice, she assured them, "You have my word, on my honor." She added solemnly, "I will always watch over you as a guardian and any future kids you may have." "Thank you, Kyuubi," he said, leaning in to give her a snout hug while keeping an arm around Sheena. They all heard something large coming from the air in the distance, and then something large being dropped close to them. Ichigo recognized it and became frightened. "It is mine, an N2, protect her, Sake." She didn't have time to argue before the bomb exploded nearby, and almost an instant later, the shockwaves hit them, destroying everything in their path. He yelled as he used the last of his strength to create a barrier of chakra around them. The barriers that Sake and Ichigo threw up held firm for a moment until Ichigo's began to falter due to combat fatigue and chakra depletion. Then, the two opposing forces tore open a hole in the fabric of time and space, and the vortex started to pull at him, pulling him inside in a moment of weakness. The last thing he heard were two female voices yelling, "No." Final flashback. The Kyuubi. Inoichi sat down in one of the room's chairs, stunned by what he had just discovered. "What were you doing with the Kyuubi no Kitsune? Did you give it the order to attack us 12 years ago?" he yelled angrily. Ichigo gave him a look as if he had grown a second head. "What? God no. You just saw all of my memories. She was once just a normal, docile fox spirit when she and 8 other spirits were captured to turned into weapons. Sheena and myself were engineered to be partnered with them, as well as being weapons ourselves. We broke free with the help of 3 people who were involved with the project. They had a change of conscience and freed us. They were Guren Hyuga, Kyohaku Senju who helped track and trap the spirits, and Futaba Yuihi who had a hand in creating myself and Sheena from Norman human babies." Hyuga. Yuihi. Senju. What's happening here? However, if he were lying, I would be aware of it. Then, Inoichi stopped when he realized something. All of those items, locations, and names. There is no question about it. In fact, he is from the pre-Sage era. He cried out in his head, but then he became serious. Regretfully, everyone he knew and cared for has passed away. He came to the conclusion, he is really alone now. The only survivor of his kind. Ichigo experienced a mental pull. He gave the mind jutsu expert a quick mental shove back into his own body and said, "Well, looks like I should be able to regain consciousness now. We'll talk more on the other side." Well, time to find out just what the hell is going on here. April 13, 6:30 HRS, Konoha Hospital. Ichigo opened his eyes blearily to see the man he had just been speaking to chatting with, an old man dressed in white robes and sporting an odd hat with the red kanji for fire on it. He became aware that the discussion was about him and what the man was seeing in his mind. They stopped talking when they realized he was now awake. The elderly man gave him a cordial greeting. "Good morning, Ichigo-kun. I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of this village, Konoha. I understand from Yamanaka-san that you are a long way from home. About 700 years, we've estimated, I'm sorry to say." Ichigo's blood began to freeze. Sheena's dazzling, affectionate smile flashed before his azure eyes, then disappeared as tears welled up in them. "No. This has to be a mistake. Or a nightmare. This can't be happening. Please God, no. He started crying. Sarutobi looked sympathetically at the young man who was crying. Having lost his wife years ago, he was all too familiar with the pain of losing a partner. With a reassuring hand on his shoulder, he whispered the final sentence. I know this must be very hard for you to bear. I know from experience. Inoichi just watched with concern. He had never experienced the pain of losing his wife, and he certainly didn't want to learn how bad it was. A few moments later, a young nurse carrying a small clipboard crept into the room. As she gave him the results, she said, Hokage. Sama, here are the results of the blood tests you requested. The elderly man repeatedly turned through the results, growing increasingly concerned with each passing moment. It is impossible. It is a full genetic match. This man is Naruto's ancestor, so it makes sense that they look so alike. His blood is actually pure, as if he were the lineage's origin. Hold on. The poor young woman was a little startled when he yelled, who else has seen these results? She squeaked out, besides myself. Oh, only the lab technician, sir. With a sigh of relief, the elderly shinobi answered. As he wrote the names of the two people, he gave the order, no one is to know of these results. I want you and the same person to run a new series of tests, against his blood again and these two individuals. The young nurse gasped in shock, understandably. Why, you can't be serious. As she hurried off, he said in a firm voice that befitted a leader, yes, I am. Now go. Tell no one or the penalty is death. He looked at the young man in front of him who was in mourning. Before lowering his voice, he said out loud, Ichigo-kun, I have a question for you. Did you and Shina-chan get intimate at any time? Ichigo gave a feeble nod after briefly blushing and becoming agitated. Sarutobi's smile spread. Then I have some good news for you. You have descendants, one of whom lives right here in this village and looks just like you. Ichigo exhales, too shocked to say anything else. You mean, she was pregnant with my child, Sake, she knew, and protected her. Naruto's past, warts and all, was the first thing the old Hokage told him about. He thought Ichigo was entitled to the whole truth. Ichigo was overjoyed to learn that he had offspring. He had children with Shina, and they had children of their own, and so on. But when he heard about Naruto's treatment, a fierce frown took hold of his face. When he inquired as to why, Sarutobi explained that it was sealed inside Naruto and that the Kyuubi had attacked the village the night of his birth. Ichigo palmed his face and sighed in dismay. Even after all these years, humans still haven't gotten any more tolerant of anything different than they are, he murmured. The acidity of his tone made Sarutobi wince, but he recalled his skills. Well, here, your abilities would be most welcome, and Naruto is a part of our shinobi forces now. With a small smirk, he said, you're asking me to join, aren't you? Before dismissively waving his hand. I would have asked you, anyway. The elderly man was now beaming broadly. In terms of force strength, this was equivalent to hitting pay dirt. As the three men discussed their plans to watch the fox boy with the blonde hair, he thought, I think my day just got better. I just might find forgiveness after all. In order to facilitate initial contact with Naruto and reduce the suspicion of ongoing contact with those around him, Ichigo suggested that he move into an apartment next to theirs. Not because Sarutobi didn't trust most of his ninja, but rather because he didn't trust Naruto. Until the time was appropriate, he didn't want anyone to find out and complicate matters further, not even Naruto himself, his teammates, or his future teacher. Inoichi told the old leader about the young blonde's combat skills and connection to the Kyuubi. When the origins of the terrifying Biju were revealed, Sarutobi was shocked, but after learning more, he began to understand their apparent violent nature. He wanted to try to get in touch with the Kyuubi directly and find out why she attacked the village. He was accepted into the village's ninja forces by the elderly man, who also gave him his Junin vest and headband after commissioning him as a Junin. To make it simpler to monitor the boy, he also put him in an apartment directly next to Naruto. Additionally, Ichigo received a pay advance to help him buy any supplies, furniture, or equipment he might require. Inoichi still had a lot of questions about his new sword and fellow blonde. It was unlike anything he had ever seen in his life. So, Ichigo-kun, about that sword of yours. Exactly what kind of blade is it? He gave him a quick demonstration by swinging it at a nearby tree, saying, oh, I call it the Viper Blade. I found it a few years ago and it seemed natural to me. While chirping. The blade cut through the tree as neatly as a sharp kunai cuts through paper, but it appeared to separate and behave like a whip. It was neat, huh? He asked. Ichigo was excited to go settle into his new pad now that the briefing was over. His fellow blonde accepted Inoichi's offer to show him around the village. In order for Ichigo to draw some basic weapons and supplies, as well as appropriate shinobi clothing, their first stop was an outfitter. With a short sword strapped to his lower back and his whip blade strapped across it, he truly looked like a Konoha Junin as he left the store. Additionally, he now wore fingerless gloves and metal armguards on his forearms. After a quick snack, they went to his apartment, where Inoichi told him to ask for anything he needed. His address and place of employment were provided. Back at the tower, Sarutobi slumped in his seat, feeling particularly old this time. He tried to make sense of everything he had learned by thinking about it all. He was now more knowledgeable about the pre-Sage era than the majority of the village's historians, if not all of them. He was also aware of the Biju's actual beginnings and their original function. The same hospital nurse, panting as though she had run the whole distance to the tower, rushed into the office just as he was about to close his eyes for a few minutes of rest. He told her to sit down and catch her breath after she wheezed as she gave him the lab results. "Here, results," she said. He was not as shocked by the results as he ought to have been. Inoichi did claim that this Shina was an exact replica of Kushina-chan, and both of them have genetic markers in common with him. The bloodline may have broken off at one time, with the Namikaze and Uzumaki being the two sides. He thought, both clans just got a second chance at survival. Then he returned his focus to the young woman. "This information is top secret. Destroy all samples and records pertaining to this individual. Same rules apply." It was obvious to her what would happen if she revealed that information, so she didn't need an explanation. As she returned to the hospital to fulfill her orders, she said, "Hi, Hokage-sama." However, Sarutobi had no time to rest. It was almost time for the Junin senseis to turn in their team assignments. He sighed wearily and called them in. 3 of the 9 Junin stood out as they filed into the large office. One was Asuma, his own son. He shared his father's affection for tobacco and his beard. Additionally, he had previously worked as a personal guard for the fire daimyo. The new Ino Shika Cho trio was supposed to be led and trained by him. He looked amused as he accepted the assignment. Kurenai Yuihi, a more recent Junin Kunoichi, came next. She agreed to join Team 8, which was supposed to focus on tracking and recon missions. She had her own reasons for wanting the Hyuga heiress on her team, but she was a moderate workaholic with a somewhat reserved personality. Last but not least was Kakashi Hitaki, the son of the well-known White Fang Tsukumo Hitaki and also widely recognized as Sharingan Kakashi, the notorious copy ninja. He was put on Team 7. For a while now, he had desired to train the Uchiha survivor. But he wasn't entirely thrilled about the third team member. "You mean Naruto Uzumaki? What a waste of time, scratching the bottom of the barrel in every skill and finishing dead last in every class." Sarutobi gave them, particularly Kakashi, an unusually close look. He questioned whether the Cycloptic Junin was merely attempting to avoid his past mistakes or if he had truly learned from them. "For Naruto's sake, I hope he has, because otherwise, things will quickly become very ugly. Ichigo might deprive us of another Sharingan user if he treats Naruto the same way the other villagers do." When I explained why Naruto needed Anbu bodyguards, he didn't appear to be very pleased. He pondered anxiously. He was aware that, despite his live attitude, Ichigo had powers that were unmatched by anyone they had ever seen, and that if they enraged him enough, he wouldn't have much trouble stomping the village flat. He recalled a statement made by his own sensei, the Shoden himself. When provoked, even a guardian angel can turn into the devil. Ichigo's apartment, Naruto's apartment complex, 0900 hours. Ichigo went out to his balcony to enjoy the view after finishing putting away his last belongings. Inoichi gave him an improvised tour of the village, but he had some questions. He heard a yawn from the nearby veranda just as he was ready to go back inside and change into some more relaxed training attire to expel some extra energy. He turned to see what appeared to be a miniature version of himself. "It has to be Naruto. That kid is so short. They fed this child, didn't they?" As he looked at the younger blonde, he thought. He was staring at him when said shorty noticed. He cried out in surprise, "Oh, what are you doing here?" "Geez, kid. Don't come with a volume control," he said, his ears which were still slightly ringing. Then he gave his name. Ichigo Suzumiya is the name. As he returned to his apartment, the older blonde said, "See ya around, kiddo. This guy is a little weird, but at least he doesn't glare at me like the others do." He told himself that he might be okay. The voice Naruto had heard the night before reappeared in his mind. "It is him. It's been too long. Ichigo-kun, I've missed you so." The tone wept. She looked at him when she heard the voice. The voice told him in a calm voice, You can trust him, kid. He will not harm you. In fact, he might even be willing to help you, if you ask him. Naruto was unsure of how to interpret this. For the boy, it was all very confusing. He questioned carefully, "Who are you? How do you know him?" She told him politely, "I am called the Kyuubi no Kitsune, my child." Suddenly, he was drawn into the depths of his thoughts and found himself in front of a huge gate that was barred and had the word, "Seal," written on it. The largest animal he had ever imagined seeing, a 30-story, tall fox with 9 enormous tails, was hiding behind the bars. Before he realized what was happening, Naruto was stunned and in awe of the scene. He was so despised because of this thing. When he realized that fact, his amazement became rage. "You!" He trembled in anger and growled at her. Sake would not have her explanation denied. "Naruto-kun, I must tell you my side of the story of what happened the night I was sealed away into you. I came to the village to fulfill an oath I made over 700 years ago to an ancestor of yours. An oath to protect his kids for the rest of my days. I was bound by a debt of honor to serve as your family's guardian beast. Upon approaching the village, I was ambushed and placed under a genjutsu by a man with eyes that looked like a pinwheel. The illusion caused me to fly into a rage, destroying everything in my path. I continued to rampage until I met the Yondaime, who looked so much like the person I swore my oath to. I was so shocked that I paused, which gave him the opening he needed to seal me into you." She told him as softly as she could, somehow quelling his anger as she did so. As if to confirm what she had told him, she descended into her human form, a tallish woman with crimson eyes and fire-red hair, clad in a sophisticated light blue kimono adorned with honey-brown maple leaves, and crowned with her 9 tails and red fox ears, which fluttered behind her. Her new appearance stunned Naruto into silence. As he questioned her about his thoughts, he thought, "Wow. She's gorgeous." Tears streamed down his cheeks as he said, I'm sorry that I got mad at you. It's just that, all this time." Upon seeing this, Sake knew how to help her young container. She pulled him into the cage and gave him a tender hug that only a mother could give. She covered her little blonde host with her tails, giving him a moment of respite. "I know, Naruto-kun. Your life has been racked with heartbreak and sorrow, with pain and lonesomeness that could have broken even the strongest hearts, but yours held fast. I can't even begin to tell you how proud I am of you, my kid." Sake played with Naruto's spiky hair with affection as he slept in her tails, reflecting on everything she had learned that day. "If necessary, I will defend this kid with my very soul," she promised as she too drifted off to sleep. "I failed to protect your descendants before, but I will fulfill my oath by protecting this boy with all of my remaining powers. I swear it." 4 days later, on April 17th at 7:30, the apartment of Naruto. The shrill sound of his apparently third-hand alarm clock had reluctantly woken Naruto. Then he woke up, took a shower, and started to boil water for his ramen. His thoughts drifted back over the previous 4 days during the 3-minute wait. On a more informal level, he had become acquainted with Ichigo, his new neighbor. By chance, he happened upon a clearing where the older blonde was training, and he was amazed by the moves, methods, and weaponry he employed. The blade broke apart and appeared to be living. He was quite elegant for a man his size. He cut a pair of training posts as easily as paper, then allowed his blade to reassemble. Deadly effective, but a bit gaudy. Then Ichigo became aware that someone was observing him. It seems that the runt came to observe. He gave himself a smile. He's never seen a better show, so why not put on the greatest one? While water started to spin and form around the elder shinobi, Naruto observed that the air around him was growing dry and still. Then he lifted his hand, and with a loud crack, the water shattered a nearby tree in two. The young Jinchuriki was astounded not by the jutsu's sheer power but rather by the fact that he accomplished his feats without using any hand seals. The water obeyed his commands as though it were a living extension of himself. From within the seal, Sake observed. Even though she was aware that he was showcasing himself to attract Naruto's attention, she was still shocked that a human of any kind could possess such great power. She was aware that he was the only one who would want to train Naruto. Ichigo called out to the short blonde, waking him from his awe. With a kind grin, his neighbor called out to him, "Hey there, short stuff. Like what you saw? Kid could use some positive attention, so I guess I'll see what he wants." Naruto yelled, "How did you do that? That was awesome." With a proud smirk, Ichigo rubbed the bridge of his nose. He teased, "That is a secret, little buddy." He turned on the puppy dog eyes and pleaded, "What? Aw, come on, can't you teach me anything? Come on, please?" Ichigo gave the boy a disbelieving glance before bursting into heart-pounding laughter and collapsing to the ground. He looked Naruto in the eye after he had recovered. He joked, "When you look at me like that, how can I refuse?" Naruto was essentially his neighbor's shadow for the next 4 days, relying on the older blonde's every word. They practiced grappling, basic taijutsu, and chakra control techniques. In exchange, Ichigo learned the Kage Bunshin from Naruto, which was very helpful. Then, as if they had known each other for years, the two neighbors simply talked over bowls of ramen at Ichiraku's. Given that the tall Junin had essentially taken Naruto under his wing, Ichigo was warmly welcomed by the ramen chef and his daughter. After each training session, the boy returned smiling despite being exhausted, filthy, and scuffed. He had gained far more knowledge in those few days than he had during the first 3 years of the academy. A patient teacher with a keen eye was all that was required to recognize the boy's untapped potential. In addition to being productive, those 4 days were among Naruto's happiest in a long time. He now had a close friend who was also a Junin and was prepared to spend time teaching him new things. On the third night, Naruto screamed out in a nightmare. After hearing him, Ichigo stormed into the tiny apartment, believing his new friend had been attacked by a foolish villager. Even though he knew it was just a nightmare, he made an effort to relax. To calm him, the older blonde said softly, "Shush, it's all right, kiddo. It's just me." That's what the Kyuubi was doing inside. The nightmare was wreaking havoc in his mind, and it was also having an impact on her. In an attempt to ease the boy's suffering, she clung to her host's mental image with her arms and tails. The fox demoness sang him a soft lullaby and whispered in his ear, "Shush, it's okay, my little kid. I won't let them hurt you. Be at ease." Sake observed that his body was becoming more relaxed and slack, and his breathing was slowing down. The damage the village had done to the helpless boy over the years caused the powerful demon to cry. "This poor kid has paid the price for their egregious ignorance. They have the audacity to call me a demon. They have shown themselves to be more like the evil monsters they claim I am than I could ever be. I'll watch over you while you sleep, Naruto-kun. I will make sure no more nightmares come to harm you." When Naruto heard his timer go off, indicating that his ramen was ready to eat, it snapped him out of his reverie. For the last time, he hurriedly finished his breakfast, cleaned up his dishes, and headed to the academy. 0800 hours Konoha Academy. Naruto arrived at his soon-to-be former classroom without any delay. He was feeling a little happier as he walked over to sit down. As he walked past him, Shikamaru Nara noticed. "That can't be right," he reasoned. He said to the blonde genin, "Hey, Naruto. Didn't you fail the exam? Not that I mind you being here." The question didn't bother Naruto in the least. He smiled and calmly told the slack-jawed Nara, "Nope. I did a make-up test and aced it, so here I am." Shikamaru observed a minor alteration in his fellow genin. He is now more composed and calm. He smiled and said, "This will be interesting to see." A loud voice called out to Naruto just as he was about to reach his seat. Kiba Inuzuka sneered at him, saying, "Hey, Dobi. Don't ignore me. I said, what do you think you're doing here?" "What, you didn't hear what I told Shikamaru? I don't feel like explaining it again, so take a hike." Naruto turned to face him with a displeased expression and waved his hand negligibly before turning around. Naturally, this infuriated the temperamental Inuzuka. He roared as he pressed down on Naruto, "Don't you get fresh with me, you weakling." He grabbed the dog Nin's arm and threw him across the room with a quick motion of his arm and the grappling lessons Ichigo had taught him. Naruto grabbed Kiba by the throat and pinned him to the wall before he could regain his sense of direction. Kiba's first observation was that Naruto's blue eyes had disappeared. They were crimson red and bloody. Secondly, he appeared to be far more powerful than he had ever been. His voice was the final one. His calm, nearly double-voiced growl, "Don't ever do that again. Do you understand me?" terrified everyone in the room, especially Kiba and his dog, Akamaru. Kiba could only give a stupid nod. His partner was even more frightened than he was. The class clown appeared. Inhuman, almost demonic, for that brief instant. A worried set of pale eyes watched him from the other side of the room. Hinata Hyuga, the village's most illustrious heir, was deeply smitten with the blonde prankster. Although she was aware that he had only reacted in self-defense, she watched the horrifying transformation pass over him. "I wish I could tell you, Naruto-kun, that I am aware of your secret and that I don't give a damn. Regardless of what others may say, the Kyuubi is the Kyuubi, and you are who you are." When Naruto eventually arrived at his seat, it was directly next to Sasuke Uchiha, the Rookie of the Year. Even though practically the entire village went out of their way to literally worship the ground he walked on, spoiling him beyond measure, Uchiha seemed to mope and pout all the time. Naruto scoffs at Sasuke's possession of everything he has ever desired. He was genuinely repulsed by the prodigy, but he never allowed his jealousy to overcome him. When Sasuke Uchiha turned to look, he saw the deceased members of his class sitting down beside him. He usually ignored Naruto, who sneered at him and called him as inferior to everyone else. But after witnessing Kiba's ordeal, he was curious about Naruto's actions, believing it to be some sort of jutsu. He desired that power, and if he got his way, no dobi would possess a power that he did not. When Naruto heard a commotion coming from the classroom door, he had already placed his head down on the desk in front of him in an attempt to get a few more minutes of sleep. He moaned to himself, "Aw, man. Now what?" Two girls rushed in like a little stampede, focusing on the seat Naruto was occupying. When it came to Naruto's well-being, Sakura Haruno and her former friend and current rival Ino Yamanaka were completely unconcerned, just like the rest of the village. They viewed the misunderstood blonde as a bad seed and a loser, and they advised against making friends with her for fear of social suicide. Although the other adults advised them to ignore him, they and a few of their classmates decided to go a step further. Every opportunity they had, they made fun of and insulted him. Sakura even went so far as to physically harm him by hitting him. Since none of the teachers or the adults who watched them stopped them, they didn't believe it was wrong. They arrived at Naruto's seat when the pink-haired girl abruptly and viciously tore him from it. His left shoulder was slightly dislocated as he landed hard on it. Hissing in agony, Naruto grasped the injured shoulder and forcefully slammed it against a wall, as Ichigo had instructed him to do but had not advised. It was all he could do not to scream in agony as he bit the inside of his cheek so hard that blood was drawn. Inside the seal, Sake was incensed at the ruthlessness with which this pink-haired harpy treated her host. As her hands and body trembled with rage, she thought, "The nerve of that wench." She was furious as she began to mend the small tears in the shoulder tendons of her ship. "Hurting my kid just to be near that Uchiha brat. If I were able to do as I wished, I'd show them just what they're dealing with." The pain vanished as quickly as it appeared. When he returned to his seat, he discovered that Sakura and Ino were still deciding who would take it. "I'm gonna sit next to Sasuke.kun, forehead girl. No, IAM, Ino.pig. For Naruto, he had heard enough of their meaningless bickering. Officially, he was mad now. These two wore Kiba's patience to the limit. They stormed in and threw him out of his seat while he was sitting quietly and not disturbing anyone. Hell, the chair across from the emo prince was completely empty. For heaven's sake, they could have sat there, however, they had to eject me from my seat. I'm done. That's it?" He gave a mental roar. On the opposite side of the room, Hinata's expression was one of anger and rage at what Sakura and Ino had done to said blonde, along with concern for Naruto. In her entire life, she had never been more enraged at anyone than she was at the two fangirls in question at the moment. She was about to get up and tell them what was on her mind when Naruto stood up and personally dealt with the issue. He yelled, "Shut up! Shut the hell up!" The two awful people had the audacity to appear shocked and then enraged. She yelled back, "What did you say, you baka?" He roared again, louder for good measure, "You heard me. But in case you have Kiba's hearing problem, I'll say it again. Shut the hell up." Before tearing them each a new asshole, he added, "What the hell is your damage, just ripping me from my seat like that?" Ichigo, meanwhile, sat outside the classroom on a branch that provided him with a good view while also keeping him hidden. To be caught keeping watch over him would simply not be acceptable. When Naruto became enraged for the first time, he almost revealed his secret. However, Naruto felt some of Saki's chakra leaking out and was more irate than before. He had been speaking to her through a shared mental link, unrestricted by the seal, for the past week. She didn't know what had happened after he vanished from their time, but he had asked her. She was in a kind of hibernation after the attack that sent him away, so she was unable to tell him. He was aware that he needed to quickly persuade Sake to cut him off. What would happen to him and those around him if he had this much of her chakra in his system was uncertain. She was unable to do it, though. She attempted to soothe him, but the seal was too powerful for her to exert that kind of control. Although she begged her host to stop, she was unsuccessful. Naruto.kun. You have to calm down. There's no telling what this much of my power in your coils will do to you. Please, stop. Don't worry, Sake. I'll stop him on my end. I just hope that he'll understand, he said to her with sadness. Naruto's ire was growing even more intense inside. They viewed him as a piece of trash, a heartless dumping ground that they could do with as they pleased. He was even told by the Uchiha that no one was interested in him. Sakura was of no assistance. She simply informed him that an unintelligent, clanless orphan was unfit to be around the Uchiha, let alone the others. Just a worthless, foolish orphan who wasn't even wanted by his own parents. Naruto lost his temper at that. The final straw was insulting his circumstances, which nearly caused him to fly in their direction. Ichigo acted as a stun gun in the same moment, flickering between himself and his targets while putting his fist in his stomach and putting some electricity in it. The crimson-red aura surrounding him dissipated as the hit swiftly dropped him, and he fell into Ichigo's embrace. "I'm sorry, kid, but this is for your own good," he was heard to say. With a sorrowful, regretful expression on his face, the tall, blonde Junin gently lifted the boy into his arms. When he heard a member of the Uchiha fan club comment on the situation, he was on the verge of leaving. Ha ha ha. The Dobi went and got himself arrested, serves him right for what he said about Sasuke.kun. I hope they kill that stew. She was never able to finish because she felt a very sharp blade kiss her neck. She turned to see Naruto sleeping on an empty table, with the ninja in question nowhere to be seen except directly behind her. This was where the older shinobi had been before. With bitterness and rage in his voice, he told her, "If you value your life, you will be silent." With the exception of a small number of people who showed Naruto some respect, the room was filled with the killing intent he was radiating, making it difficult to breathe. He put his short sword back in its sheath and told them, "I am not here to arrest him. I'm only here to bring him to Hokage-sama, as he wishes to speak with him. Then I find all of this. I must say that I am thoroughly disgusted by your actions. What happened was completely uncalled for, and you," he pointed to Ino and Sakura, "were the ones who struck first. I have no doubts that if I hadn't stopped him, you two wouldn't be breathing right now, so consider yourselves lucky. Next time, you may not be so fortunate." Ino appeared outraged by the implication. "Huh? Sasuke.kun would have saved us. It doesn't matter how strong the baka is. Sasuke.kun will always be stronger. After all, what can some stupid orphan do, anyway?" The normally composed blonde was really upset by this remark. He struck her with a glare that was so full of deadly intent that it caused her to drop to her knees in terror. With an inhuman-sounding growl, he said, "You know nothing, you ignorant little girl. You don't know." He added in a tone that was more muted, quiet, and pained. He concluded by giving himself a small hug as he relived a portion of his past. The pain. Being all alone, with no one to help you, everyone hating you for something you can't help and they can't understand. A chilly voice sneered from the side of the room, "HN. You're just weak. Just like the Dobi and the rest of this village." As Uchiha Sasuke took center stage, his fangirls gathered around him. She said, "Sasuke.kun is right. He'll be the strongest in the village before long. After they make him Hokage, even you will bow to him." Ichigo, Shikamaru, and Hinata all gave her the look of someone growing a second head. The lazy genius drew lead. "Geez, listen to yourselves. Do you have any idea how dumb you sound? Blind faith and ignorant devotion are both dead ends in the shinobi way of life. They started some of the worst tragedies in history." Ichigo contributed his expertise to the debate. "I agree. Those traits turned a once peaceful country into a genocide machine, nearly driving an entire race in extinction. They made a religions of peace and goodwill, into fanatical and bloodthirsty mobs that murdered all those who disagreed with them. Tell me, where do you see your version leading you?" His words left the crowd stunned. There was nothing that even the fangirls could say to refute that claim. When Iruka entered the room to hear that, she was only able to nod in agreement with the words wisdom. "I agree as well. Blind fanaticism is foolish and very dangerous in this line of work. I've seen firsthand the kind of horrors that blind faith can give rise to." Hinata added a response this time. "Admitting that you are in pain is not weakness, but itself a form of strength. He always felt the pain, but never surrendered to it. I've watched him for a long time, and I know the real him. He is far stronger than I could ever hope to be." The young Hyuga spoke in a proud voice. "She looks exactly like Gurren. Her voice, face, and eyes are all identical." At the statement, Sakura snorted rather unladylike. "Whatever. Just because you like the baka, doesn't mean—" She was about to finish, but she was silenced by a glowing palm and a pair of Byakugan eyes that were activated just a fraction of an inch from her face. Hinata spat, her words bursting with barely controlled rage. "Not one more word. I have had it with you and the rest of your kind. You fangirls really are a despicable breed. You will leave Naruto.kun alone, or you will regret it. Do not think that I am weak. I was merely holding back for fear of killing someone, but now I will not let such concerns stay my hand any longer. Do you understand?" The pinkette could only give a nod. They had no idea what the timid and bashful Hyuga girl would do if they put her to the test because they had never seen her like this. Ichigo looked at her appreciatively. He thanked her before turning to face Shikamaru. "Thank you. This boy has been mistreated for far too long. It warmed my heart to hear you express that. You, too." It's nice to see someone so young with such a level head. Gurren, I will risk my life to protect this child of your ancestry. He gave her a soft smile and said, I'll see if I can nurse it along. It seems like she has a slight crush on Naruto. The Hyuga heiress worked up the courage to ask him a question, noting how much this new Junin resembled her crush. Anyo. Who are you? I've never seen you before, but you seem to look just like Naruto-kun. He reasoned that since it was an honest question, it should have an equally honest response. Me? I'm his neighbor. The name's Ichigo Suzumiya. As for the resemblance, just a coincidence. That response appeared to satisfy Hinata, who then introduced herself. She bowed gracefully and said in a kind and courteous tone, I must apologize for my ill manners. I am Hinata Hyuga. It is a pleasure to meet you, Suzumiya-san. Shikamaru grinned a little at this new Junin's easygoing demeanor. Shikamaru Nara here. Nice to meet you, Suzumiya-san. Smiling too, Iruka made the decision to introduce himself. He greeted them by saying, My name is Iruka Amino, their instructor. A pleasure, Suzumiya-san. Ichigo smiled and accepted his handshake. Ichigo gave the honorific a hearty laugh. As he carried an unconscious Naruto into his arms, he assured them, no worries, it's alright. You guys can just call me Ichigo. Iruka-san, could you pass on a message to whomever Naruto's Junin? Sensei might be that I have taken him to see Hokage. Sama? Sure, but why? Ichigo's tone became solemn and businesslike. Tell whomever it is that it has to do with his condition in October 10th. Iruka understood the message and nodded, realizing how urgent it was to see the Hokage. Right. I'll inform him or her and direct them your way. He replied to the teacher, Thank you, Iruka-san. I must be going now. His voice reverberated as he vanished in a flash of sheer speed, leaving a class in confusion. In order to draw the class's attention to team assignments, Iruka cleared his throat. Team 7 will be Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Junin. Sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki. When Naruto was mentioned as a member of her team, Sakura objected. She complained to Iruka, Why'd I have to get saddled with the Dobi? That's not fair, but he refused to listen. He shot back at her in a cool but demanding tone that challenged her to speak again. These teams are decided upon by the Hokage himself. Would you claim to know better than him, Miss Haruno? Sasuke, meanwhile, scowled at the team makeup while remaining glum in his chair. He spoke to Sakura in a chilly, sour tone. A useless Dobi and an pathetic fan. Girl. If you hold me back, you'll regret it. Sakura appeared to have been slapped. She tried to take his arm and pleaded with him, her eyes stinging with tears. But, you circa can't mean that, can you Sasuke-kun? Don't touch me, Sasuke said, shoving her away roughly as if she were contagious. He sneered as he lifted his hand to strike her, saying, Stay out of my way, or else. You are nothing but a burden. Shikamaru had had enough, and although he didn't like Sakura, he was a fellow Konoha shinobi, and his mother had instilled some chivalry in him. He restrained Sasuke from doing anything else with his Kage-main jutsu, and Choji followed suit, spreading his arms and hands to trap the Uchiha. Nara snarled, That's enough, Uchiha. Ino started berating them because she couldn't believe what these two were doing to the person she loved. What the hell are you doing to Sasuke-kun? This time, Choji received the response. The big Akamichi boy calmly replied, the same thing that Naruto would have done if he did that to you or anyone else. Ino was now searching for explanations and justifications for why her crush would be so heartless and cruel. He was just, she stammered, but Shino Aburame interrupted her. Now that you are aware of his true nature, why do you still justify him? In contrast to his typically silent tone, the silent bug.nin said, This is obviously not logical or rational behavior. Iruka, too, had had enough. Enough? The two longtime friends released Sasuke after he yelled at the class, not even using his famous, big head that he usually used to chastise pupils, letting the class know that he was truly angry this time. You just demonstrated blatant disrespect for your teammates and disdain for your fellow shinobi, Sasuke Uchiha. I would remove your headband immediately and forbid you from ever training to be a ninja if I had the power. For effect, he snarled into Sasuke's face, saying, Is that clear? You will be silent and I will hear about no more of your little temper tantrums. He went on. Iruka shook his head and went on down the list, while Sasuke just sulked over being yelled at, huffed, and sat in the back of the class. Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Kiba Inuzuka will make up Team 8. Kurenai Uehi will be your Junin sensei. Hinata's expression darkened with disillusionment. She would have to settle for having Naruto on her team, at the very least. Complaining about something that was predetermined would be impolite, particularly in light of the incident that Team 7 caused. Naruto-kun is a bad guy on a team that despises him. At least the sensei should be kind to him, she hoped. Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Shoji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka. Your Junin. Sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. That concludes the pairing for this class. I wish you all the best of luck in your new careers, he told them as he left the room. Regarding the team makeups, Ino was strangely silent. She still harbored feelings for the Uchiha, but she began to have serious doubts when he threatened to harm Sakura the way he did. She also recalled Shoji's statement that, despite their overt animosity toward him, Naruto would have jumped to her aid and done the same as Shikamaru. All of it made her think a lot. Team 7's sensei was still absent when the other senseis entered and removed their students. Sakura stayed away from Sasuke for the moment. At the moment, she was fighting with herself about how to handle what had happened. Goddamn that dumb Naruto. He is solely to blame for this, she yelled in her mind. Her inner self, which had been quiet ever since she developed a crush on Sasuke, started to lash out at her. Don't you dare blame this on Naruto. You've always known that Sasuke was like this, but you've always been too blind to see it. Naruto was always nice to you and everyone else. Until you all kicked him when he was down. That disgusted me more than the constant fawning and time you've wasted on that brooding jerk. Oh yeah. Then why did that baka lose it like he did? He had no reason to. She countered, but inner Sakura interrupted her. Avoid making excuses. You attacked him first, in all your genius. You have the audacity to point out that he has no one to return home to after tearing him out of his chair and injuring his shoulder. Snarled, that was low, even for you. She was the voice of reason that Sakura managed to maintain lockdown, but enough was enough. She knew that her negative opinion of Naruto was based on rumors and gossip rather than her parents, and the presence of the Uchiha was an even greater negative influence. Her heart went out to him, it really did, but with the fan girl persona in place as the main face, there was nothing she could do but try to talk some sense into her host. This new information about the whiskered blonde only made her dislike his treatment even more. However, she was too easily swayed and naive to see the boy for who he truly was. A sad, lonely boy who was pleading for help to a world that seemed disgusted with his very existence. So what? He's still just annoying and stupid. No wonder nobody would adopt him. Sakura's fan girl tendencies took over as she struggled to express the rage of her inner self. The utter cruelty of those words left inner Sakura stunned. How could you? She exhaled, stunned by what she had heard but soon recovered. This is unforgivable. This is how you repay his kindness. With cruelty. You will now treat him better, at least as a teammate, or I will hold you accountable. She growled as she retreated into Sakura's thoughts. Mark me. I will fulfill my threat. She snorted. You make me pay. Yeah right. Sakura was too stubborn to change overnight, much less over time, and she had no intention of listening to her inner self's warning. The sound of the classroom door opening and closing startled her out of her reverie, and she turned to see a tall, gaunt-looking Junin standing in the doorway. Are you on Team 7? He asked languidly. Sakura gave a nod. Are you not a little short? Naruto Uzumaki is where? With a hint of frustration, he asked them. When Sakura noticed that Sasuke was not responding, she chose to say to him what the Junin who had arrived earlier had instructed her to say. Kakashi. Sensei. He was taken to see the Hokage by a Junin who had entered earlier. Who was that? Do you know? As she considered what had been said, she trailed off. He also told me to mention something about a condition, and October 10th. He looked nice but he was kind of scary. And he looked almost exactly like Naruto. Are you aware of his meaning? Since she had no idea what the deceased last member of her class could have to do with anything, he asked Frank. We'll do introductions here, then Naruto will get to do his tomorrow, he said as they were introducing themselves. Predictable. At least I got the Uchiha I wanted. He thought to himself, referring to the two genin in front of him. Be at training ground number 7 tomorrow at 0700 for your test, he said, his only visible eye widening for a moment before he spoke. As he turned to face the Hokage regarding Naruto, he warned them, you might not want to eat breakfast, or you might throw up. Hey, Sasuke-kun. Sakura said, turning to face Sasuke, who had already risen to leave for home. Would you let me walk home? With a faint flush, she asked him in the hopes that he had calmed down from before, but the response she received dashed her hopes. No, then he glared at her and muttered, go away, you pest. The person she idolized and put on a pedestal was being extremely mean and cruel to her, just like she had been to her teammate, and all she could do was cry as he left. She was pulled into the depths of her own mind at that very moment, and she encountered her inner self there. Well, how does it feel to be experiencing what you have done to Naruto for so many years? Anticipating a response, inner Sakura questioned her. Why? Why is this taking place? That Sasuke despises me is entirely Baka's fault. At her underlying ego, she screamed. This once more. Is Naruto to blame for this, please? He had no purpose for being there. He went to see the Hokage about something with this other Junin, Ichigo Suzumiya. There seemed to be a problem with him. He had never behaved in such a manner. It was really weird, she muttered. Who gives a damn? For me, Sasuke-kun is the only one. That Baka got in the way, and I will never forgive them. Sakura's inner voice moaned in disgust. You're obstinate. Okay. I'll continue to teach you the hard way. Then perhaps it will occur to you. As she vanished once more into her host's subconscious, she growled. I hope you don't lose it first. After clearing it with a shake of her head, the pinkette headed home. 1640 hours Haruno resident Sakura called out to her parents as she stumbled tiredly into her home's entryway, saying, I'm home. Sanae, a somewhat doting woman with a level head on her shoulders, had a real knack for numbers, as she handled the family's and the business's finances. Her father, Takeo, was a particularly shrewd businessman with a keen eye, and his flair for wheeling and dealing kept them in the black. Her parents, Takeo and Sanae, ran a small import-export business in the village, trading wares with various different countries and towns, and were moderately successful at it. When the carnage subsided on the night of the Kyuubi attack, they had just returned to the village when they learned of the Yondaimi's final wish and the demon being sealed into a newborn baby. They knew that the fallen Hokage saw something special in the boy, and they tried to fulfill the wish by adopting him, but the council prevented them from doing so, along with the few other families and clans who came forward. They were left to watch as the poor boy grew up alone and unloved, and it made Sanae sad. They did some business with the boy, such as allowing him to assist in exchange for food or some extra cash, and Takeo was so impressed by his work ethic and quick thinking that he offered Naruto a full-time position with him when he grew up. However, Naruto declined, claiming that he had already put them in danger simply by being there and that he didn't want to take advantage of them when they were so kind to him, so he vanished. They only heard the same nasty rumors about him, and to make matters worse, their daughter Sakura, who was a girl of that Uchiha brat that the rest of the village was eager to spoil, had begun spreading the same vile rumors and generally making the misunderstood boy's school life as miserable as his private life. The idea that the Uchiha clan was responsible for ensuring that Naruto was never adopted made Takeo's blood boil, and he knew that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Sanae shared this view. All she had heard about Naruto from her daughter was that he was obnoxious, foolish, and the last to die. She chastised her daughter for thinking that way and for not getting to know him for herself, as she had hoped that Sakura would be his friend or at least be kind to him, but those hopes were shattered. When Takeo heard his daughter enter the store after closing, he said, "Oh, hey there, sweetie." In his typical manner, he said, "Hello, Dad." She replied with a weary sigh that he noticed. "Well, how was your day? You were put on a team today, correct?" He questioned his daughter. "It's unbelievable that Sasuke-kun is on my team." Ino.Pig was incredibly envious. She let out a squeal. The rate at which he was spoiled had soon become a nuisance, though, and her father was not overly thrilled about that, simply grunting in acknowledgement, because he never really liked the brat, and every time he turned around, someone else was waiting to kiss that little brat's ass. When the brat entered his store one day and demanded that the prices be lowered for him as well, Takeo didn't really agree with that idea, telling him that he was no different from everyone else and that he had to pay the same. Sasuke didn't like being told that he couldn't have what he wanted, so he complained to the civilian council and trade commissions about it, and as a result, they slapped him with fees, suits, and embargoes against him. Tuchi Ichiraku and the Ino Shika Sho trio were the only ones who kept his small business afloat after they heard how he attempted to help Naruto and decided to do business through him. "Honey, how is your other teammate doing?" Sakura's abrupt change from animated to irritated was a little unsettling. "That Dobi Naruto is just a third wheel on this team," she said. "He will only obstruct Sasuke-kun." She would have gone on, but her mother, the most unlikely of people, interrupted her. "He shouldn't even be a ninja." Sanae appeared absolutely incensed. She had sat there and listened to her daughter repeat all of the disgusting rumors that were being spread about the Uzumaki boy, and each time it broke her heart to pieces because she knew the boy personally and thought he was one of the sweetest, if not completely innocent, people she had ever met. "Sakura, you keep disparaging that boy, even though he has only been polite and kind to you and your classmates. I must say that I am extremely disappointed in you after hearing about some of your more violent outbursts against him. Your friend's parents don't know who that poor boy actually is, so you just mindlessly followed along with whatever they told you. He is a really sweet and kind boy, based on my one encounter with him. Sakura took a moment to gather her thoughts before attempting to defend herself after her mother had chastised her once more for how she treated the Dobi. The village adores Sasuke-kun, the Rookie of the Year, who comes from a well-known and prosperous clan and is talented and attractive. She began to rant, but she was slapped before realizing that her words would land her in serious trouble. While that baka is stupid, dead last, and a worthless and poor orphan whose parents didn't even want him. My dear, are you able to hear yourself? What did the Uchiha accomplish that was so noteworthy? This time, her father said, the only reason he is so skilled is because he has teachers and others who go above and beyond to help him, whereas the Uzumaki has had to learn everything on his own with no one to help him. After this conversation ended and they had dinner, Sakura took a bath and went to bed, allowing inner Sakura to talk to her as she lost consciousness. Do you see now? Even your parents advised you to treat him with more kindness. You see him every day, and they know more about him than you do, she warned. Sakura was upset after receiving a reprimand from her parents. Stop talking. That baka is to blame for this. My parents yelled at me because of him. Oh my god, you're so stupid. Being a part of you makes me ashamed, she sighed in disgust. As her parents listened, she complained in her sleep, Naruto, baka. What can we do? Sanae whispered as she gave herself a hug. I can't believe that this village's blind hatred has gotten to our little girl. I don't know, her husband said, putting a hand on her shoulder. Waiting and hoping that this is merely a phase she's going through is the best course of action. I'm not sure what we can do if this keeps up. 17:20 hours Naruto's apartment. Ichigo escorted Naruto into his apartment, placed him on his bed, and left for home, shocked by the ruthlessness of the boy's peers. The hatred their parents had shown him, which had spread to their children, and the same intolerance he and Shina had previously had to deal with, and he didn't like it at all. He remembered meeting Naruto's Junin sensei, Kakashi Hatake, an hour ago. He had heard that he was a great shinobi, but based on the records he had seen when his Anbu team took up protecting Naruto, he had a strong dislike for the well-known copy.nin. Flashback. In the Hokage's office an hour ago, Sarutobi and Ichigo had just finished reviewing some documents regarding a particular team's mission, which was for an Anbu squad to protect and guard Naruto. However, their performance was appalling and smacked of foul play. It appeared as though Naruto was led into ambushes and they just sat there doing nothing. When Inoichi came out, he was very upset. Ichigo asked him what was wrong, and Inoichi told him about what his daughter had done once more. Inoichi had been called in to check on Naruto's mental state, and after a quick run through Naruto's memories, he was satisfied. When Kakashi entered the office, they were still talking about what had happened after Ichigo knocked Naruto unconscious. What is the matter with Naruto? The three other men in the room hardened their eyes at his tone of annoyance as he asked. With a low growl, Ichigo said, he was assaulted by his peers, and in turn provoked the Kyuubi into responding. He turned around and gave Kakashi a close look while closely examining him. At last, Kakashi became irritated. What? Ichigo stepped back and started to pace before him. Kakashi, I read your file. Anbu Captain at 14, Genin at 6, Chunin at 10, and Junin at 12. Very impressive, he said absently. I'm not following what Naruto's condition has to do with me. Await me. I'll get to that. Here are the documents and reports from a particular mission that you and your team completed during your Anbu days. Here to protect a certain boy. Naruto. An elite ninja like you ought to have been able to stop some of the civilian and lower-level Chunin attacks on the boy, right? He waved the file folder in front of him as he added. The copy. Nin's visible eye widened in shock at this, as if he were on a board of inquiry, being grilled about the Naruto protection missions by a Junin he had never seen before. Wha? How? Who? He stammered, but Ichigo interrupted him with a stern gesture. Who I am should be the least of your worries. It is not important at the moment. And how? I was graciously given time and access to look through these documents by Hokage Sama. How very interesting, he joked, putting a gimlet eye on the copy.nin. It appears that the boy was actually led into ambushes by your team, and they watched as the beatings took place. In order to avoid incurring the Hokage's wrath on themselves, they halted the attackers just short of killing him. When all of this occurred, where were you? Kakashi realized he was caught right away and said, I was at the Memorial Stone. He now understood that he had made a serious error that shouldn't have happened and that Naruto had to pay the price. Ichigo's file explained his motivation for being there. Your teammates, Rin and Obito, right? His tone became more sympathetic as he asked. Yeah, Kakashi said, bowing his head even more. Ichigo let out a sigh and said, I know how painful your loss is, but it is totally unacceptable that you let it interfere with your performance to the point where an innocent boy was nearly tortured to death under your supervision. That boy almost died as a result of this poor decision, which also violated the confidence that Hokage Sama and the Yondaime had in you. He frowned at Kakashi and said, you betrayed him by letting you, his last student, watch over this boy. Kakashi became even more enraged as a result. What do you know about pain? You're just an outsider. Who fell into Hokage Sama's good graces? He growled at the tall blonde. You are completely unaware of the suffering and anguish. Hitaki, enough. Sarutobi had had enough. Seething with rage at the copy ninja's impudence, the elderly Hokage yelled, this young man knows more about pain and suffering than anyone save Naruto. Along with his wife and kids, his entire world was torn away from him. Moreover, he didn't fall into my favor. Never again will you insult me in this way. I've known this young man for a long time, and I have total faith in him. To my eternal shame, he has acted in this way out of concern for Naruto, something that very few people have ever done. Because he believed that tact was more important than bravery, Kakashi swallowed his anger and said, Hokage Sama, I apologize for my outburst. I haven't seen the Sandaime this furious since the night of the Kyuubi attack, when the council attempted to execute Naruto. My comments were inappropriate. Good day, sir, he said curtly as he made his way to the door. He paused briefly before opening it and then said to Ichigo, tell Naruto to come to training ground 7 at 0600 tomorrow morning. He then left. The three men sighed together as he walked away, and Ichigo shook his head. This isn't going to be well received, is it? He whispered. Inoichi nodded and concurred with him, saying, I understand, but it must have been much worse than him, but I handled it much better. For instance, you and Naruto. But he consistently fails to show up for his council meetings. To get their attention, Sarutobi cleared his throat and said, I think we should check on Naruto and the seal's condition. He turned to the younger blonde and said, Ichigo. He answered sharply and professionally, yes, sir. I want you to use Inoichi to check the seal's condition. To put it briefly, you will be joining him as a precaution against the Kyuubi. He nodded, thinking with glee as Inoichi prepared his mind jutsu. After a moment, they were ready, and they nodded to one another before jumping into the seal. I'll get to see Sake again, he thought. They landed in front of the enormous gate that served as the demon's prison, and as they approached Naruto, who was lying on a kind of red furry pillow just inside the gate, they were pushed back by a burst of energy. The mighty Kyuubi no Kitsune herself was glaring down at them when they heard growling coming from inside the bars. Ichigo calmed Inoichi as he approached the demon with composure, saying, Sake. It's me, Ichigo. Ichigo knew he had nothing to fear. Almost immediately, the demon stopped growling and started to glow and shrink. When the glow subsided, a stunning woman with crimson eyes and hair, 9 tails, and red fox ears was revealed, grinning piteously at him. Ichigo-kun. Good. She sighed in relief. I truly don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped what was happening. He could have died from having that much demonic chakra in him at one time, she said. All I can say is that I'm happy we caught him before he did something he would later regret. Ichigo began. I'll just help him deal with his anger, but Inoichi interrupted. You can send him to me for council meetings if you'd like. He thought, as I previously mentioned, I am also a therapist and I am better suited for these kinds of things. After giving it some thought and nodding in agreement, Ichigo and Sake discussed the specifics and eventually left the seal. All right, Ichigo said. Ichigo picked up Naruto and took him home after the blonde pair informed Sarutobi of the decision and scheduled the first session for a week from now. End of flashback. Ichigo sighed as he turned to face his lone surviving descendant. You realize, kiddo, that this village is a really mess? He mumbled as he got up and wrote Naruto a note explaining the following day, his responsibilities, the counseling sessions, and that he should come over if he had any questions. 0515 hours on April 18th, Naruto's apartment. The note that was left for him explained what he had to do and why he did it, as well as what his new sensei had in store for him. Naruto woke up slowly and held his gut in his hands, feeling as though someone had driven an electrified battering ram into his gut. Sighing, he showered and hurried off to the designated training ground to meet his team, not realizing that he was going to have another crazy day. He wanted to ask the taller blonde about it, but he was already gone, with a note on the door stating that he had a patrol mission that morning and would return later that day. 0555 hours training ground number 7. With only a few minutes remaining, Naruto staggered into the training area and saw 2 other people there. They might be my new teammates, he thought excitedly as he rushed to them, but his excitement was short-lived as soon as he saw who his teammates were. His new teammates, Sakura and Sasuke, shared his feelings, considering his presence to be an unwanted burden and annoyance. Sakura simply followed along mindlessly, while Sasuke felt that Naruto wasn't deserving of the same air as him. As he sat down and practiced a meditation exercise that Ichigo had taught him to help him focus, he thought bitterly, HMPH. Those two deserve each other. He was attempting to ignore the glares they were giving him. After 3 hours of waiting, their sensei finally arrived with a burst of smoke. "You're late," Sakura shouted to him. At least Kakashi was polite enough to look sheepish. "I apologize for that. I simply lost my way in life," he informed them. What a load of crap, Naruto thought as he regained consciousness after meditating. Kakashi saw him sitting in the lotus position and was observing the genin in front of him, but Naruto interrupted him to say, "What? You must be Naruto Uzumaki, the third member of this team," he said loudly. "We already did introductions yesterday while you were talking with Hokage Sama, but if you want, you can do yours now." Naruto sighed and introduced himself, even though he could already tell by looking around that they wouldn't give a damn. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I enjoy eating ramen, working out, and spending time with my new neighbor, who is genuinely kind to me and teaches me a lot of interesting things. Arrogance, narrow-mindedness, and those who despise others for uncontrollable reasons are things I dislike. In order to prove my value to everyone and to make my new friend proud, I want to become the strongest shinobi I can be." Kakashi had his nose stuck in his smut book after Sasuke and Sakura had just blown him off, and Naruto was shocked by their rudeness. "Hello?" he called out loudly. Kakashi snapped out of his reading. "Oh. Are you finished?" He pulled out 2 bells and said, "Good, now we can get to the test." He explained that they had until noon to retrieve the bells from him, and that if they didn't, they would be tied to a stump and denied lunch. Naruto was about to attack Kakashi, but he refrained after recalling Ichigo's advice to thoroughly research his opponents. When Kakashi gave the order to begin, Sakura and Sasuke fled, but Naruto remained and carefully examined the copy. Nin, saying, "You know, Naruto, most people would hide to do what you're doing." "Yes, and? I am myself and no one else. I am not most people. You heard me earlier, didn't you?" That was his response. "All right. You want the bells, don't you?" He made fun of it. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't, but I'm not stupid enough to attack you without a plan." "Well, you'd better come up with one quick, then." With a smile that bordered on evil, Naruto said, "Who's to say I don't already have one?" he retorted. A few seconds later, dozens of clones appeared out of the ground beneath him like demented daisies, latching on to the Junin to slow him down so that the real Naruto could sneak in and grab a bell. Kakashi took the initiative and attacked because he didn't like what he was seeing, but Naruto just poofed out of existence. He thanked Ichigo in private for teaching him to be patient and use his head for once. Kakashi was a Junin for a reason, though, because he quickly realized what Naruto had planned, seeped into the ground to shake off the clones that had latched on and popped out elsewhere, and then started to slaughter the clones in large numbers. Despite his improvement over the past week from Ichigo, he could only go so far, and his taijutsu was pitiful in comparison to the Junins, but he persisted until a few minutes later, he struck Naruto hard in the head. Those were solid clones, not just illusions. How the hell did that idiot weakling get such a jutsu and not me? Sasuke watched the entire event with jealous glee as Kakashi now focused on the other 2 genin and started stalking them. Meanwhile, Naruto woke up and started to get better, saying, "Oh hhh. That really hurt." He's a Junin, so of course that hurt. "I believe that teamwork is the key to this test. Naruto.kun. Try to at least give it a try, even though I know you won't like it," Sasuke suggested. As he brought himself back to reality, Naruto nodded after giving it some thought. "Alright, I'll try, but just for the record, they're more likely to attack me than cooperate." He heard a scream in the distance, which he recognized as coming from Sakura, so he went there first. When he got to her, he created some shadow clones to look for Kakashi and, if necessary, keep him at bay. He sensed a slight residue of chakra surrounding her, which he knew was the result of a genjutsu, and he concentrated some of it into a ram seal before yelling, "Kai!" As he broke the genjutsu the pink-haired girl was under. She stirred and woke up. "Sasuke.kun?" she asked blearily before catching a glimpse of the golden-haired boy in the world. "Naruto. Baka. So. This is how you thank me for releasing you from that genjutsu," she yelled, throwing a punch at him only to have him deflect it away from her and knock her off balance. "I wanted to know if you and Sasuke would be interested in working together to get the bells on Kakashi. Sensei." "Hey," she mocked him, saying, "as if we would degrade ourselves to working with the Dobi. Teamwork is the goal of this test. By now, you ought to have figured that out." She wasn't listening when he tried to tell her, He's trying to split us and make us work against each other. Naruto, stop talking. You're returning to the academy, and Sasuke-kun and I will pass. As she rushed to locate Sasuke, she yelled. As he got up to find Sasuke, he muttered, damn it. They just won't listen to me. By chance, one of his patrolling clones had discovered the emo jerk no more than 300 yards from him, and Kakashi was nowhere to be seen in the immediate vicinity. After bringing Sakura back around for a second time and unburying Sasuke, he ran his teamwork idea past him, only to have it mocked. Why should I work with losers like the two of you? Mostly glaring at Sakura, he told them in a chilly manner. As he calmly made his way toward the clearing to try to entice Kakashi out, Naruto sighed and shook his head, saying to no one in particular, at least I tried. This is already starting to look like the team that I taught, the Sannin, and not for the better, the old Hokage thought gloomily as he recalled how the Sannin turned out. Naruto, the dead last, figured out the meaning behind the test and tried to cooperate with his teammates, but they blew him off, Sasuke because of his arrogance and pride, and Sakura just following along blindly. Sarutobi was watching the entire event from his crystal ball in his office and was not impressed with Team 7. Those brats haven't learned their lesson yet. He growled in his mind as he concentrated on the remainder of the exam, while Junin, who shared similar sentiments, watched the drama play out back at the training grounds. Naruto was tied to a post in the middle of the field and made to watch the others eat while Kakashi walked off somewhere, but he told them that Naruto was not to be fed or they would fail. The allotted time had passed, and the genin gathered in front of Kakashi, who reprimanded him for fighting him alone but not the Uchiha and for not working with Sasuke and Sakura instead. When Sakura heard Naruto's stomach rumble loudly and saw him grimace, she sat there warily eating her lunch in front of a hungry Naruto. That didn't sound good, Sakura said to herself. She remarked, it sounded like he hadn't eaten in a long time, forget about breakfast. Anyway, fangirl Sakura retorted, I'm not failing just because that loser can't afford to eat properly. Sakura's inner rage flared, but she had an idea. Hey, come here, she said, drawing in and temporarily controlling her obnoxious main ego. When Naruto saw that Sakura had stood up, glanced around, and offered him a piece of her shrimp so he could eat it, Sasuke snapped, don't feed him. That dobi alone won't cause me to fail. If we want to have a chance against Kakashi, sensei, we need him to be more energetic. Together, we cannot succeed, she retorted. After giving it some thought, Sasuke gave in and said, all right. He shoved the food in his face and spat, here. That bastard. He's taking all the credit for something he didn't do. Inner Sakura and Ichigo thought the same thing when Kakashi appeared in front of them, telling them that they passed the test and giving Sasuke the credit for figuring it out. Sake, however, had a clear idea of what had happened. That girl. She has a split personality. One that doesn't seem to mind the kid and doesn't like that Uchiha all that much, she concluded. Naruto was perplexed by Sakura's actions, as she initially treated him like a plague before feeding and assisting him. Just as inner Sakura lost control and the fangirl persona took over again, Sasuke got up and got in Sakura's face. You stupid girl. You nearly cost me my chance to avenge my family. He growled as he raised his hand to slap her. Kakashi had just finished his brief speech by telling them when and where to meet and dubbed them Team 7. He then poofed away to parts unknown, leaving Naruto tied to the post. Just before the blow hit, a jet of water from the almost canal erupted, nailing the boy with the raven hair. Sakura turned to see where the jutsu had come from, only to find the Junin from yesterday, his gloved hand extended, staring at the stunned Uchiha. What in the world are you doing? With a growl, he approached the stump to which Naruto was bound and snapped his fingers, causing the ropes to appear as though they had been cut by an invisible knife before falling away to release the young, blonde boy. He used a jutsu without hand seals. I must have that ability, Sasuke yelled, drawing everyone's attention. Hey, you. Teach me that. Teach you what? How did you accomplish that? You employed a jutsu technique without even considering it or using hand seals. I must possess that power, he insisted. He said bluntly but sharply, I can't teach anybody to wield this power, and even if I could, I wouldn't teach someone who would strike and abandon his teammates in cold blood. This caused Sasuke's pride to sting and his dander to get up. Teach me, bad idea, kid. He roared as he swung at the tall, blonde Junin, only to be grabbed by the throat and raised higher. Sakura awoke from her reverie in time to beg Sasuke, saying, don't harm Sasuke-kun. Do not, it wasn't his intention. He dropped Sasuke, but the boy wasn't done yet, so he ran through hand seals and called out his jutsu. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Ichigo was shocked to see that this guy was about to deck her, but she was still pleading for him. This is sick. He barked out as he spat a huge fireball at the tall man. He was about to dodge, but he noticed that Naruto and Sakura were still behind him. Damn! He growled. He snarled calmly but fiercely, "You could have killed you teammates, you little bastard." He waved his hand to conjure a shield of water around them to shield them from the searing heat, and as the fireball subsided, he disappeared from view, emerging behind the wood.be Avenger with his short blade drawn across his throat. Sakura was once more astounded by the strange man's accomplishments. No wind-up or hand seals. Just execution. Who is he? Naruto was in a different state of mind. Thanks for the save, Ichigo-san. He had witnessed Ichigo perform this action previously, but it still astounded him each time. You too, go home, Ichigo said, nodding before quickly knocking the boy unconscious and grabbing him by the shirt collar. They nodded as he disappeared in a whirlpool of water, taking their aggressive teammate with him. I'm taking him to your sensei for a little chat, he said in a tone that demanded obedience. Sakura interrupted Naruto as he turned to head home, saying, Naruto, do you know him or something? After pausing to reflect, Naruto said, yes. He lives next door to me. It's actually kind of cool to hang out with him, even though he just moved in a week ago. He enjoys teaching me basic skills like meditation, taijutsu, basic grappling, and some chakra control. Ichiraku serves me ramen every day after he kicks my ass into shape. He replied, clearly pleased to know him. He's a really nice guy and wouldn't hurt anyone without a good reason, and proceeded home. Sasuke's actions gave her more to think about. This was the second time he had almost hit her on purpose, and now he had almost killed her, but the pink-haired girl simply stood in silence for a moment before moving, choosing to ignore it as she trudged home. 1437 Hours Memorial Stone. Ichigo announced his arrival at the memorial stone with a water burst. He approached Kakashi after noticing him gazing at the stone and reading his orange smut book. With a neutral tone, he called out, I thought I'd find you here, Hitaki. Kakashi turned around. Ichigo threw Sasuke to the ground with force, and the copy. Nin became a little upset that one of his pupils had been mistreated. He was going to scold the blonde, who was a little taller, but the blonde beat him to it. He attacked his teammates with a fire jutsu, stating that they nearly cost him his chance at revenge. When he noticed that Kakashi was barely listening to him, he added that Sakura and Naruto were injured to see how he would react, but he got no response. He became angry with Sasuke for injuring the Uchiha prodigy, and his only concern was for Sasuke's welfare. I only knocked him unconscious and brought him here to you, the sensei, for punishment. He snubly said, just leave him to me and go. My team doesn't concern you. He picked up the sulky jackass and walked off to the hospital. He growled angrily, but then quickly collected himself and returned to town to get some sake. He doesn't even care for his other students as long as he had that Uchiha brat. That bastard, he said. I'll require it. T Street, 1527 HRS, downtown Konoha. With a gasp, Anko Mitarashi had just finished her third bottle of sake. She reached for another stick of dango and whooped, ah, ha ha. That hit the spot. A slightly inebriated man strolled up to her at the bar on the other side. Intoxicatedly, he drawled, babe. Anko made every effort to ignore the man, but he kept bugging her, making it difficult due to his sake breath and poor personal hygiene. Ah, come on. Don't you want to have a drink with me? At the end of her patience, she growled. A hand sprang out and clamped down on his shoulder, hard, causing his knees to buckle as he tried to reach out and glomp her. A tall, fair-haired man showed up. Move, was all he said, but his eyes were full of murderous intent, and the man sobered up almost immediately while urinating. Ichigo sat down at the bar beside her, and the man scurried back to the corner from which he had crawled. She looked at him for a while. He looked damn close to the fourth, she said, but she ignored that for the moment as she talked to him. I could have handled that. He simply shrugged and said, I wanted a drink and he was in my way. When he replied, she grinned. Very direct and concise. I appreciate that, and it was priceless how he made that guy feign embarrassment simply by glancing at him. Never seen you around before. Name's Anko. Anko Mitarashi. What's yours? After examining her for a while, he answered. He ordered some sake and pork dumplings for himself and gave her a straightforward response. Ichigo Suzumiya. I just got here last week. Looking at his equipment, the snake mistress said, a kodachi and some sort of ninjutsu? I would say that he practices kenjutsu, but his physique suggests that he practices taijutsu. I might as well continue our conversation. He looks intriguing, she thought. So, where are you from? Really, nowhere. I simply wandered around, gathering items as I went. I eventually made it here, applied for a shinobi job, and was promoted to Junin. I was asked to watch a child named Naruto by the elderly man. This attracted the attention of Anko, a member of Naruto's protection squad, who became somewhat attached to the little runt, who was like her, shunned and hated, except that people were trying to kill him. She became agitated whenever the topic of his well-being was raised, so she chose to listen a little longer before making a decision. Ichigo let out a loud sigh and thought of a way to avoid telling her the truth. What a poor kid. I am fully aware of who he is, but that does not justify treating him in the same manner. It brought back memories of my younger self. He said, his face crestfallen and hazy with pain. I was treated like a freak because of my unusual abilities. I am aware of who you are referring to. A few years ago, I was part of his protection detail. He could still locate me and wave at me even if I was hidden. He even once brought me a flower as a token of appreciation for my kindness toward him. She laughed when she thought back to those moments and the times she rocked him to sleep during his nightmares. He's a pretty sweet kid. Ichigo drained some of the sake from his freshly served bottle and laughed a little himself. Yeah, he's a pretty cool kid, Ichigo said. He asked me to teach him something after he saw me training one day and threw these puppy dog eyes at me. I taught him some basic grappling, meditation, and chakra control exercises, he said, laughing. That child absorbed that information like a sponge, I promise. He was the dead last in his class, which startled me, but it also raised a warning sign. What on earth has the academy been doing with him if he is such a quick learner? Anko wondered, those bastards. They sabotaged his training. She knew that they attempted to prevent him from attending the academy, but she never imagined that they would go so far as to ruin his education. Bingo. He is now on a team after graduating from there, but the sensei is lacking in many ways. Who was the sensei? Kakashi Hitaki. When Anko heard that name, she froze. She recalled that the attacks resumed after Kakashi's Anbu team moved in to relieve hers. Now that cycloptic bastard is his Junin sensei, as if that wasn't awful enough. She pondered. What about his team? She inquired, nearly fearing his response. Some fangirl named Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. A tiny growl escaped Anko's throat. Naruto now had one Uchiha on his team after she had captured numerous others attempting to harm him. A recipe for disaster is created when you combine that with the Uchiha fangirl and the jerk who allowed him to be beaten and nearly killed. Ichigo, who was gorging himself on a pork dumpling, did not miss this. Yeah. That's how I feel. That little turd tried to fry Naruto while Kakashi left him tied to a post earlier. I cut him free, knocked out the Uchiha and brought him to Kakashi for some justice, but what does he do? He lets the brat off easy, right? Ichigo grinned. He was fond of her. In his opinion, she was acceptable because she was razor sharp and equally protective of Naruto as he was. As he continued to eat, he related to her, right? I was so pissed off that I came here to cool down. For a while, the two engaged in small talk and business. He found out a little bit about her. She was 24 years old, just like him, and a Tokubetsu Junin, and she loved this bar. He decided to overlook it, figuring she had a rather soiled past. Everybody has a few secrets. Ichigo was starting to worry about Naruto as it was getting late. I'd better get going. I'll see you around sometime, Anko. Sure thing. See y'all later, Ichigo. The tall man said goodbye and made his way home from the bar. Kurenai Yuihi, one of her friends, entered the bar as he was leaving. The crimson-eyed Kunoichi called out, "Hey Anko." "Ah, here. Chan," was her enthusiastic greeting. "So, how is it leading a group of brats so far?" Kurenai let out a ragged, weary sigh. One's almost a mute, one is a total horndog and the Kunoichi is the most timid little thing I've ever met. If it weren't for the eyes, I'd swear she wasn't a Hyuga. Playfully, Anko remarked, "Wow. Sounds like a real dream team you've got there." Kurenai desired a change of direction. "So, who was that guy you were talking with?" Before responding, Anko sighed and glanced around. With this knowledge, she was confident that Kurenai could be trusted. "You remember how I was part of the Uzumaki Kids guard team, right?" Kurenai was taken aback by Anko's solemn tone, but she remembered and nodded. He was assigned to protect the kid, and from the looks of the team Naruto was dealt, he's gonna have his work cut out for him. When Kurenai recalled the time they were given their team assignments, she shuddered. His Junin sensei is Kakashi. The same Kakashi who, on multiple occasions, almost allowed Naruto to die while under his supervision. Then came that Uchiha boy and his teammate who was a fangirl. Naruto's issues were only made worse by this. The thought of Kakashi making the same error the Sandame did with his own team made her heart sink. After reading about the Sandame's team and learning how to be a sensei, she had learned from Asuma that the old Hokage still holds himself responsible for the team's fate. Because Orochimaru was a genius, He preferred him to his other pupils. Kakashi appeared to be about to make the same error. Those three will be a serious problem. He made contact with him and is trying to teach him some things because he knows that Kakashi won't teach him squat. That Uchiha kid will get jealous of every little thing and that Haruno girl will be like his personal cheerleader, making things worse. Anko confided in her friend in an almost desperate voice. Kurenai was aware of her friend's partial, almost sibling-like attachment to the Uzumaki boy. One day, Kurenai observed the boy and the treatment he received. She was shocked to see that he put on a strong front to show them that they weren't getting to him, but it still made her sick to her stomach. It didn't work out that way, but she was also hoping to get him on her team. She had her own reasons for disliking Kakashi. He appeared lethargic, was late for everything, and read that smut book in public with no shame. As was customary, the two kunoichi simply sat and chatted for a while before leaving. She wished Ichigo luck, which he would definitely need, and wished Naruto safety before turning in for the night. That little blonde ball of energy and mischief had wormed his way into her heart, though she couldn't tell how or when it happened. Timeskip. The 19th of August Ichigo had arrived and taken charge of the young Jinchuriki 3 months prior. At best, things with Team 7 were frustrating. It was standard procedure for Kakashi to assign them a task, then vanish for the day, repeating the cycle. He kept helping Naruto covertly, teaching him useful little taijutsu techniques or assisting him with control. When he discovered that Kakashi was providing Sasuke with extra care and training, he began to do this more frequently. He pushed aside his uneasiness as he considered how Naruto would have been if he hadn't arrived at that time. Sakura declined Naruto's request to join him in the training, preferring to watch the Uchiha train and swoon over him instead. Ichigo gave a frustrated shake of his head. Naruto, remember this. You tried to help your teammate, but she refused to be helped. If she gets hurt because she wants to play damsel in distress, it won't be your fault. He meant it. Ichigo and Anko became close friends after they began to hang out. She needed another reliable friend outside of work besides Kurenai and Ibiki, and he needed a friendly face his own age. She had a good sense of humor and was straightforward and honest, which drew him in a little. To be honest, Anko made him think of his Shina so much that it was painful. In some way, he thought he was betraying her. She enjoyed his good humor and friendly demeanor, especially when he tricked Kakashi's team by making them run through the center of the village right behind him while he was dressed as Kakashi in one of Guy's suits that was a bit too small for him in the crotch area. Still, they refused to be completely honest with one another. She introduced him to Kurenai and Asuma, and he made some new friends. He got to know Team 8 and its members through Kurenai. At first glance, he thought Kiba was just a typical boy of his age, if not a little horndog. It was easy to forget Shino was there because he was so quiet. Hinata had previously met him, but she struggled to express her opinions because she was always so shy. He was a little alarmed by this because it was unusual for a girl so young to be so quiet. He could see right away that something was seriously amiss. Ichigo's suspicions about a poor home life were confirmed when he asked Kurenai about her family one day and the crimson-eyed kunoichi let out a long sigh. She explained to him how her father, Hiyashi Hyuga, had essentially disregarded her as the heir apparent to the clan, handing the role over to her younger sister, Hanabi. The girl's confidence had been damaged, and even though the clan's politics were complicated, that did not justify it. But now, more than ever, he was committed to paying back Gurren, one of the people who had freed him. He approached the Hyuga heir following the conclusion of one of Team 8's training sessions. He greeted her warmly, saying, "Oh, Hinata-chan. Pleasure to see you this fine afternoon." The girl turned and bowed courteously, but she squeaked in surprise. Her voice trailed off as she said, "Hello, Ichigo-san. How are you, today?" "Oh, I'm doing alright. Say, would you mind taking a small stroll with me through the village? I can tell something's bothering you, and maybe I can help?" After giving the offer a suspicious glance, she concluded that it couldn't hurt. She might get some helpful advice from him, and he seemed friendly. As they walked down T Street, the village's commercial center, she answered, "Oh. Okay." He casually led them to a bakery because he recalled from a conversation with Kurenai that she loved cinnamon rolls. Innocently, he sniffed the air. As he ran inside, she said, "Smells nice. Hold on a moment, Hina-chan." He returned a moment later with 2 rolls, one for her and one for himself, and led her to a bench close by. "Now, would you mind telling me?" With a sigh, Hinata took a deep breath and started to share the details of her life, including how she is treated at home. She later appeared older and more worn out than any child of her age should be. As he ate his roll, Ichigo thought about what he had discovered, except that he wished he had some milk to drink with it. Therefore, he He simply places the blame for all of his problems on her rather than confronting the truth and behaving like a father. He thought gloomily, but then he recalled that the girl was infatuated with his descendant. He discussed it with her and found out that she watched Naruto from a distance and stayed away from her own hand because she was afraid of her father. He urged the young girl to express her feelings to Naruto, even if only slightly at first. Shen began gradually introducing herself to him over the course of 3 months. With Ichigo keeping an eye on them to make sure nothing untoward occurs, they had a talk here in an Ichiraku excursion there. Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata's teammate, witnessed the situation and was not pleased. He had a feeling that Hinata was his, and he had grown a little possessive of her. One day, he decided to go and break it up when he saw them eating out at Ichiraku's, breaking Naruto's nose in the process. He didn't realize his sensei was observing the two of them from the other side of the street as he strode down the street with a particular blonde on his hit list. Kiba's jealous expression told Kurenai exactly what he intended to do. She yelled, "Kiba, stop right there." When he heard her voice, the Inuzuka boy froze, but he turned around and concealed his fear of her. Trying to be polite, he asked her, "What is it, Kurenai?" "Sensei." "Where do you think you're going?" "Certainly not to break up an outing between friends over at Ichiraku's." He growled, losing track of who he was speaking to. "You're damn right I am. That stupid Dobi has no right to be around Hinata like that. She belongs to me." What he had just said was unbelievable to Kurenai. She refused to listen to it anymore because it was one of the most chauvinistic things she had ever heard, but she surprised herself by slapping the boy. As she pulled him toward the Inuzuka compound, the crimson-eyed Kunoichi said, "Kiba Inuzuka. What in the hell is wrong with you? How dare you treat a female, let alone your own teammate, like an object? We're going to have a good talk with your mother and sister about your views on women." Now Kiba was completely terrified. When they learned what he was saying about women, particularly his mother, his sister Hana and mother Sume would turn him into a smear on the wall. Going forward, Naruto was making rapid progress under Ichigo's patient tutelage. Because Ichigo taught him jujitsu, taekwondo, and muay thai, his taijutsu was now more structured. Anko explained affinity cards to Ichigo and tested him herself. The tall blonde grinned as she realized that Naruto shared Ichigo's affinity for wind and water. It was much easier to train him in elemental manipulation because of this, but Ichigo had no jutsu knowledge because he could make the wind and water attack whenever he wanted. However, Anko informed him that since water was one of her affinities, she had it covered for at least that. Due to the rarity of wind users, wind was going to be more difficult. Sarutobi, however, directed him to his wind. Using Sun, Asuma. Team 10 trained in a clearing close to the one he and Naruto used, so he didn't have to search far. Ichigo made the decision to visit Team 10 one day. With a splash of water, he materialized before them. Asuma asked what he wanted, and Ichigo said he would wait until they were finished. He then greeted Shikamaru, who responded informally. "Asuma, I need your help," he said to the bearded Junin. He inquired, "And what do I get in return?" Ichigo smiled. "I'll teach your team some of my taijutsu if you want, along with other skills of your choosing." After giving the idea some thought, Asuma responded, "All right, what do you need?" Asuma frowned as he explained the situation with Kakashi and Sasuke. "I'd like for you to teach Naruto some Futon Jutsu, just a few D rank, maybe a C rank if you feel comfortable," he said. Playing favorites was practically illegal in his eyes, and it appeared that Kakashi was determined to spoil the Uchiha brat and the other villagers. He was relieved that someone wasn't attempting to assist the outcast who ought to have been viewed as a hero in that way. "You've got a deal. I'd like for you to teach them some of your taijutsu and to talk Ino out of dieting. It's killing her slowly and all because of that Uchiha brat. I've tried and so has her father, but she just won't have it." Ichigo glanced at the blonde girl and saw that she was beginning to exhibit the symptoms of anorexia. His expression was dejected as he remarked, "She's so young, but she looks so skinny. I'll do it. I'll see if I can make her a little healthier and beef up your boys while I'm at it." Shoji has some confidence issues and Shikamaru needs to be motivated more. Ino's condition stems from confidence issues as well. "I just haven't seen it a girl that young before," he said with sadness. After observing them for a short while, Asuma was astounded to learn all of this and vowed to assist in putting things right. But he had a burning question in his head. "Who are you, though? I've never really met you before," he inquired. Ichigo just grinned. As he disappeared in a whirlpool of water, he surprised the genin by saying, "Ask your father. Tell him that I trust you." Ichigo told Asuma the truth, in part. He was informed that Ichigo was Naruto's uncle, who returned to the village to guard the last surviving member of his family after learning of his nephew's survival. In order to avoid drawing attention to himself, the surname was merely a camouflage. Asuma's admiration for the man only grew stronger. But when he learned that Kakashi was expected to care for Naruto in accordance with the desires of the Yondaime, his sensei, his respect for Kakashi suffered yet another setback. Ichigo has so far fulfilled his promise to assist. He was teaching Choji how to use his bulk more effectively and how to grapple. He taught Shikamaru Tai Chi Quan, which matched his personality and had the greatest impact with the least amount of work. Asuma fulfilled his promise by teaching Naruto some D-rank jutsu and a C-rank weapon for defeating adversaries and buying your team some time. The Fuuton. Daitapa. That was not the case with Ino. She immediately reverted to the same claim that Sasuke preferred slender women when he attempted to persuade her to stop dieting. He sought guidance on girls from Anko and Kurenai when he was at his lowest. At that point, he had a brilliant idea. Ichigo invited Ino to accompany him on a stroll around the village. As he led her to a dango booth for a treat, he smiled gently and said, "Ino, what are the things that you want in a boyfriend? It's okay to be honest with me. I won't tell anyone, cross my heart." That was a new question for Ino. After giving the question some thought, she gave an honest response. Well, he'd have to be nice, funny, smile a lot, and like a girl for who she is inside. He gave a head nod. He handed her a dango skewer and asked her bluntly, "Good. Now, if you would allow me another question? Which of these things does Sasuke embody?" As she attempted to defend her feelings for the sulky boy who never laughed, smiled, or said anything nice to anyone, she was rendered speechless. For a few moments, the blonde girl sat quietly. "Ichigo, sensei, could you walk me home? I need to think on some things." He said, "Sure, Ino-chan," and gave her instructions to go get a few skewers to take home. When they arrived at her house, he gave her a reassuring shoulder pat. As he vanished in a splash of water, he added, "Don't worry, Ino-chan. I know you'll figure this out." She arrived at practice a week later looking a little healthier and in a better mood. Asuma asked Ichigo because he was unable to understand what had happened. He was informed by the tall, mysterious blonde that Sasuke is no longer there and that she has somewhat matured. When Ichigo arrived for their scheduled training, Ino couldn't help but remember their chat from that afternoon last week. After following Sasuke and watching him without the rose-tinted glasses she had previously worn, she had concluded that he was not all that she had made him out to be. He constantly scowled and glared at everyone, and he was a bit snobbish. She started looking for someone who possessed these qualities without even realizing it, and she found a few people she never would have considered. Two of them were her own teammates. Even though she was cruel and controlling to them, they still stood up for her when Sasuke made fun of her. Another was Naruto, whom she observed constantly attempting to assist his teammates only to be dismissed by them. Even though Sakura was quite mean to him herself, he still screamed at Sasuke for treating her badly. The final one was Ichigo, who she thought had freed her. He prevented her from becoming like Sakura, who would have been beaten, mistreated, and abandoned if Naruto hadn't been there to protect her, as well as from herself and her illusions. In an attempt to convince herself that the boy who truly loves her would accept her for who she is, she also quit crash dieting when she realized it was starting to harm her. She approached Ichigo after training that day and grabbed his hand, dragging him into town and back to the dango stand they had visited the week before. She beckoned him to bend down to her height and said, "Ichigo, sensei, I did some thinking about what you said and I wanted to say something to you." She threw her arms around his neck after giving him a cheek kiss. She choked out, "Thank you. Thank you so much." Ichigo was shocked that the X.fangirl followed his advice and knelt down to give her a gentle hug, saying, "You're very welcome." The sweet moment between the two made onlookers smile. The girl sobbed for a few more seconds before she passed out from exhaustion. It caught up with her because she had put in a lot of training that day. He took the girl in his arms and carried her home with gentle care. When Inoichi saw his little girl unconscious, he almost had a heart attack, but Ichigo reassured him that she had a long day and was simply exhausted. After carrying her upstairs to her room, the two men put her to bed for the day. Inoichi requested that he wait until he could get his coat. While he waited, his wife, Akari, offered him some tea. She expressed her gratitude to him for helping her daughter. She started talking to the young man her husband had mentioned several times in the previous month. Asuma's identity as Naruto's uncle was revealed to her, but it was kept a secret to better protect the boy. They discussed this and that until an odd question arose. Ichigo-kun, are you currently seeing any of our lucky ladies here in the village? She was curious. He almost choked on his tea at the inquisitive question, but he assured her that he wasn't. She secretly hoped that Ino was old enough to pursue him rather than that hideous Uchiha, or that they had an older daughter to introduce him to. Inoichi came down the stairs to save him from more awkward questions, and the two of them went to a bar that he and his friends frequently frequented. To Inoichi's surprise, the heads of Nara and Akamichi were already present, and they gestured them to their table. Shikaku and Shuza had desired to meet the individual who helped boost their kid's self-esteem. The Nara head had never witnessed his son so motivated, and Shuza admired the self-assurance his son now displayed. The happiest of them all was Inoichi. Without the Uchiha brat, this young man had restored his daughter's sense of self-worth and broken her destructive and potentially deadly tendencies. Asuma learned the specifics of their brief heart and expressed gratitude that the girl would be alright moving forward. He thanked Naruto by giving him a small scroll that contained a few more advanced wind jutsu, such as the Rep Pusho and Furyuden, which would maximize the blonde's enormous chakra reserves. He learned several water jutsu techniques from Anko, including the Teppoudama, Mizurappa, Suiryuden, and Suijinheki. She also helped him improve his throwing technique. She emphasized that he should not use his new abilities in front of Kakashi or his team unless his life was in danger, saying, in her exact words, "You couldn't hit a bull in the ass with a baseball bat as you are now, so I may as well beat some skill into you." Sasuke or Kakashi learning about the additional training and complaining would only cause them more headaches, so they couldn't have that happen. With a silent Naruto following them, Team 7 was currently en route to Hokage Tower to receive their daily mission. Since then, he had learned to keep quiet and let his teammates make a fool of themselves while he figured out what motivated them and became adept at predicting their words and actions. Even after these past few months, Sakura continued to harbor fangirl tendencies. She continued to try to hold on to Sasuke whenever she could, but he would either push her away, scream at her, or occasionally do both. Even though he no longer has a crush on her, Naruto still made an effort to defend her because she was a teammate, but she would yell at him or take a swing at him. Since the day they joined Team 7, Kakashi had been providing Sasuke with specialized training. Because of his implanted Sharingan eye, the copy.nin was able to teach the prodigal Uchiha a vast array of jutsu techniques as well as taijutsu forms that he had stolen from numerous shinobi from Konoha and numerous other villages over the years, including one Maeda Guy. A month after his arrival, Ichigo had met the eccentric Junin and his group. The tall blonde found Guy's manners a little strange, but he knew that Guy was an excellent sensei because of the way he treated each of his students equally. Neji, the Hyuga Biy on his team and the previous year's Rookie of the Year, received the same treatment as Rock Lee, the deceased member of the same class. Lee was actually his personal project. The boy's inability to use ninjutsu or genjutsu to save his life was caused by a rare condition in his chakra coils, not a lack of skill. The boy's perseverance attracted Guy's attention. His sensei is teaching Lee everything he knows about taijutsu, and Lee is now essentially a perfect replica of him. The fact that Kakashi effectively stole all of that labor and effort and gave it to Sasuke was what truly infuriated Ichigo. For Guy, the pride and joy of both himself and his students, the Goken style was revered. He, not Kakashi, should have been the one to figure out who had learned it. As Sakura watched and applauded, Kakashi instructed Naruto to practice his control and pulled Sasuke aside to train him alone. He had been observing everything Team 7 did. When he filed his reports, this naturally infuriated both him and the Hokage. 8 o'clock Hokage Tower. After receiving another mission inside the tower, Team 7 went to the mission hall. After greeting the Hokage, Kakashi asked for the day's mission. As he went through the D-rank missions, the Hokage babbled, weeding Mrs. Kurigane's garden, cleaning the Inuzuka kennels, babysitting triplets. Naruto let out a loud sigh. Just another dull D rank. Aw man. He moaned in his head, being careful not to speak out loud. Sakura yelling this early in the morning was the last thing he wanted. But the dull picking that was placed in front of him made Sasuke laugh. I can't get stronger if we keep going on the lame missions. I need better missions if I'm going to activate my Sharingan, he grumbled. Iruka picked it up quickly. You've only just graduated from the academy 3 months ago. You need to complete D ranks for a little while longer before you start asking for higher ranked ones. The instructor warned. Kakashi was not pleased with his valued pupil's reprimand. This is my team, Chunin. I decide when they are ready, and I think we can handle a C rank. Sarutobi let out a deep sigh. He gave in and said, very well. He gave Iruka the order, send in Tazuna. At least in his late 50s or early 60s, the man who entered mission hall was utterly inebriated. What? My life's gonna be in the hands of a bunch of snot-nosed brats. I don't like the looks of him, especially that blonde runt, he said. Naruto was fighting the urge to throttle the inebriated old jerk with all of his remaining self-control. He told himself, calm down. Calm down. In with the good, out with the bad. Naruto's patience was further tested when he assured the elderly man, Tazuna-san, I am a Junin and Sasuke here is pretty good, so I think you'll be safe with us. The elderly man himself explained the mission to them, to protect him from bandits and to keep him safe while he completes a bridge in his native land of waves. Ichigo entered through the hallway window as they were dismissed to go prepare for the mission. The old Hokage said to him, Ichigo, I trust you heard the details? Yeah, I did. Good. Your mission will be to shadow them for the duration of the mission and submit a report back to me of what happened. I'll bounce that off of what Kakashi tells me. Leave out nothing and remain unseen and undetected. Only intervene if they are in danger of being wiped out. You will be temporarily instated in the Anbu for this, so go see the quartermaster and receive your armor and mask, he instructed. He saluted and disappeared in a gust of wind, saying, Gotcha, sir. I'll head out and get my gear, then commence my mission. I'll make sure they all make it back. Sarutobi lit his pipe and sank back in his chair. Well now, Kakashi. Let's see how honest you are. 12:05 hours en route to Wave Country. Tazuna was traveling with Team 7 to Wave Country. Sasuke remained silent the entire journey, either pouting or looking around. Sakura split her time between conversing with Sasuke, who ignored her, and asking Tazuna questions. Naruto, who had never been this far outside the village walls before, was occupied with admiring the scenery. As usual, Kakashi's nose was deep in his smutbook, and he occasionally giggled in a strange way. Even though he was far behind them, Ichigo managed to keep them in sight. He remained in the trees and did his best to conceal his chakra. His directives were very clear, to watch how well Team 7 handles themselves, their mechanics, and Kakashi's training and leadership styles. He wasn't supposed to come out unless the team was in imminent danger of going extinct. He was to remain anonymous even at that point. If Kakashi's prior performance on the guard detail was any indication, the elderly man apparently didn't trust him with Naruto's welfare outside the village's boundaries. Sarutobi thought that in order to focus on Sasuke, Kakashi would disregard him and further disregard his and Sakura's training. All he needed was proof to expose his obvious shortcomings and make him confront reality. He was startled out of his reverie when he saw an odd chakra signature directly in front of the group. He managed to catch up to them and remained hidden, watching them closely. Naruto also noticed something odd while he was back with Team 7. There was a puddle of water on the ground near the roadside. He noticed that there were no clouds in the sky. The ground surrounding the puddle was a little dry because there hadn't been any rain in weeks. What the devil? Saki's words confirmed his suspicions, so he thought, that can't be right. Be careful, Naruto-kun. Something's not right. I can smell it in the air. He approached Kakashi and said, Hey, Kakashi. Sensei? After taking her advice to heart. What, Naruto? He said, his voice irritated. As he finished his question, he thought, geez. I just wanted to ask you something. I know you saw that puddle back there. Don't you think it's a little weird to see that on a hot day with no rain for weeks? Just keep your eyes on the path, Naruto, and don't talk unless you have something intelligent to say. The blonde's anger at the dismissal was raging. You dumb asshole. I'm attempting to alert you. He swore inwardly at the one-eyed Junin, but before he could say anything, two strange ninjas he had never seen before emerged from the puddle and charged at Kakashi, wrapping him in a razor chain that was stretched between them. The two Nin cut their sensei in two with a firm tug, and the three genin watched in horror. After that, the two ninjas focused on Tazuna and headed straight for him. Just in time, Naruto tackled Sakura and Tazuna, who were standing motionless in terror. He yelled, "Get down!" but was slashed by the chain in the process. Sasuke, who was standing close by, attacked them from their blind spot and used a few kunai to pin their chain to a nearby tree while using his own team and the client as bait to make them forget about him. No, that was contaminated. Naruto's vision started to blur and he thought. Sake sensed the poison seeping in and beginning to harm Naruto, but she immediately got to work neutralizing it to prevent too much harm to her host. Naruto-kun, just keep fighting and leave the poison to me. In response, he created some shadow clones to go assist Sasuke while he regained his senses. Got it, Sake-chan, he said. A wave of relief passed over him as he felt the Kyuubi start to neutralize the poison in his system, but Sakura simply watched in disbelief at what had just transpired. She swung at him, shouting, "Baka, I wanted Sasuke-kun to save me," into his face. As he used one of his new jutsu to throw himself back into the battle, Naruto was simply ignoring her. After waiting for Sasuke to clear, he executed a few hand seals before attacking. Fuuton. Daitapa. The outcome exceeded his expectations. The two were flung back into the trees. where they remained stunned until the cage buncheons could close in and brutally defeat them. Having seen it all, Ichigo was incredibly proud of his student and descendant. Sasuke paused to consider what Naruto had done while he was trying to catch his breath. Where did he learn that? That Dobi took them out with that wind jutsu? I'm in greater need. When Kakashi returned to the open, he became enraged. Before turning to face Sakura, he praised the Uchiha Avenger, saying, "Well done, Sasuke. I knew you could handle this. You too, Sakura. You protected the client." He scowled as he then turned to face Naruto. You didn't do anything except get in the way. You could have hurt the client and Sasuke didn't need your help. That futon jutsu was reckless and you could have hurt Sasuke with it. If you can't work with them, you have no place on this team." Ichigo was shocked by what he had just heard. That jackass simply gave them the credit when Naruto actually tried to cooperate with them and even saved them. To keep from breaking cover and kicking his ass, he had to exercise every ounce of self-control. Naruto was equally enraged. "I just tried to help out, that bastard," as his temper began to flare, he thought. "Then where the hell did you disappear to when you should have been here to help us?" he replied. The single eye of the one-eyed Junin narrowed. "I was trying to see who they were after until you interfered." He dropped to one knee, clutching his shoulder, the poison still not fully absorbed. "I think it's pretty obvious that they were after the old geezer. They made a B-line right for him," he yelled. After removing the rag from the boy's head and applying it as a bandage, the elderly man hurried to his side. As he finished dressing the wound, Tazuna whispered to him, "Don't worry, kid. I know that you were the star of the show this time around and you got hurt saving me. Thanks, kid." Naruto nodded and smiled slightly at him. "Thanks, old man." Kakashi began questioning Tazuna about why, in the presence of enemy shinobi, he had only paid for a C-rank mission. The two shinobi who attacked them were the Demon Brothers, Shunin, level Noob.Nin from Kiri. While they would have been easy pickings for Kakashi, Genin, an academy newbie, found them to be quite challenging. Wave Country was extremely impoverished and unable to pay for a higher-ranked mission, Tazuna retorted. Ignoring Naruto, he sighed and asked Sakura and Sasuke what they thought. Sasuke simply grunted and expressed his desire to continue. Though uncertain, Sakura concurred with her crush. They picked up and left Naruto behind after Kakashi called one of his hounds to bring a message to the village about the prisoner picked up. Naruto stumbled to his feet to follow them, and Sakura glanced back at him. She simply was unable to solve it. Her crush apparently abandoned her to her fate, but the boy she frequently made fun of had just saved her life. "Would it kill you to wait for me? Freakin' jerks," complained Naruto as he slowly stood up and caught up to them. Ichigo leapt down to stop Pakun, the small pug, as he ran underneath him. He held out a scroll and uttered, "Here. Give this to the Hokage for me." Although he was wearing the uniform of a Konoha Anbu, the dog gave him a suspicious look. "What are you doing here?" He pointed to the direction that Team 7 had taken off in and stated, "I am on a mission of my own from the old man himself and it involves them. I can't say anything more than that, but it has to do with the Yondaimi's legacy and Hitaki's irresponsible handling of him," he continued. Ichigo, or Kitsune, saw the grim expression on Pakun's face. "I trust you know about it, then?" Slowly, the pug nodded. It breathed and then recomposed itself, saying, "Yes. I do. That fool Hitaki. I told him that his actions would come back to haunt him." So, the Hokage finally deemed it necessary to have Hitaki monitored? Ichigo nodded gravely at the little pug. He has thus far proven to be a laughable teacher, and it has begun to become a liability that Hokage Sama no longer wishes to allow to continue. Pakun agreed with a grunt. There was no point in arguing. It was only a matter of time until some information was revealed about Kakashi's mistakes. The tiny ninkin let out a sigh. He took the scroll from the tall blonde wearing a fox mask and said, "You have my word that I won't breath a word of this to Hitaki. I'll deliver your message to the old man." With a glowing hand that was giving him chakra, he replied, "Thank you. For your time." Kitsune went on his way, and the pug nodded and carried on. The fox masked blonde muttered angrily as he began to catch up to the team once more, "I'm really starting to hate you, Hitaki." They had made camp for the night back with Team 7. Tazuna was sleeping under a tree. Naruto was crouching close to the fire he had started and cooking some fish he had caught, and Sakura had remained close to Sasuke more out of habit than anything else. He was appreciative that Ichigo took him fishing and taught him how to catch fish fast. Wiping his forehead, he yelled that the chow was on. The food was gone before he knew it, and Tazuna was the only one who had expressed gratitude. Even the fish he had reserved for himself was gone, but when he turned to face Sasuke, he was holding 2 fish. As he took out a ration bar that he hoped to save for later, he thought angrily, that jerk. One of those was for me. Dude, I was hoping to put this off until later. Sakura grimaced as he watched Naruto eat the disgusting ration while the others savored the grilled fish he had made himself. The girl with the pink hair was now enmeshed in an internal conflict with her inner self. He looks so dejected and hurt that his own teammates and sensei have no consideration for him and how he even went and cooked dinner for all of us. He didn't even get to enjoy it. Inner Sakura sighed. Who cares? That baka should have caught more if he wanted to eat. Sasuke-kun needs food to perform and Naruto just needs to stay out of the way. Sakura gasped. She responded, still fuming with rage over what Kakashi and Sasuke had done earlier. The baka, as you call him, saved your life today while your precious Uchiha let you defenseless and uncovered. That foolish Uchiha nearly got himself killed until Naruto got involved and covered his back. That's not true. Take that back, she retorted, upset that someone had called attention to one of Sasuke's numerous obvious flaws. Sakura lunged at her, taunting her. Inner Sakura, make me. For a few seconds, inner Sakura had taken control of her body and tamed the fangirl persona with a well-placed fist. She noticed that she had enough of her fish left to share with her teammate. She immediately got up and walked to the log where Naruto was sitting, preparing something, at the edge of their camp. To her surprise, he jumped and flinched away from her when she tapped him on the shoulder to get his attention. His tone stabilized a little, but his tone remained suspicious as he said, What is it, Sakura? What is she doing? Despite her lack of display, it was painful to no longer be Sakura-chan. Since it demonstrated that someone genuinely cared for her, inner Sakura really relished it. Seeing the doubtful expression on his face, she said, Naruto? Would you like to finish this? He's suspicious, of course. She's been a complete witch to him, she thought as she considered a good reason. She held out the food and said, I just thought that since you were kind enough to catch and cook dinner, it's the least I could do. After eyeing the food and looking her in the eye, Naruto turned back to her and let out a sigh. As he got up and left, he told her, thanks. But, no thanks. You eat it and keep your strength up. I don't need Kakashi Sensei or Sasuke blaming me if you get hungry and can't keep up. She said, Wait. Where are you going? Without looking back, he told her as he left the camp, to set some perimeter traps for the night. Inner Sakura lost control and the fangirl regained it just before he disappeared from her view. She cursed, damn. Ran out of time, as she was shuffled to a subliminal corner of her host. Why is that baka there? As she approached Sasuke to speak with him, she thought, who cares as long as he leaves us alone? Despite his apparent lack of focus, Kakashi witnessed everything that happened. He also questioned how Naruto acquired some of his fighting techniques and Futon Jutsu. Although he was told that Naruto could hardly defend himself, Naruto briefly outperformed him during the test and had to put up a stronger fight than he had against Sasuke. Furthermore, Naruto defeated and eliminated the Demon Brothers, performing far better than Sasuke in the fight. He was curious as to who was assisting Naruto and getting in the way of his team. After setting his traps, Naruto returned to the camp and was about to take a short nap when Sasuke confronted him. He demanded, where did you go, Dobi? Naruto gave a small snort. As he unfurled his bedroll, he responded, typical Uchiha charm, I see. If you have to know, I was out setting some perimeter traps as an insurance against any more sneak attacks. That response, however, did not satisfy Sasuke, who seized Naruto's jacket front. Where did you learn that ninjutsu and clone jutsu? Who gave them to you? He repeated his request. His hands were knocked away from him by Naruto. That's enough. Cut it out, Sasuke. Why are you angry that I may have learned something that you don't? Sakura heard and saw what was going on, but her inner Sakura flared up once more. Inner Sakura attempted to reason, oh, no you don't. You stay out of this. You'll only make things worse. How dare that baka talk to Sasuke-kun that way? She was furious. Inner Sakura growled as she disappeared once more, saying, what Naruto was taught is his own business, not ours. Leave him be, you've done enough to him in recent months. Sakura took a seat on a nearby log and observed everything that transpired. Sasuke glared at the boy with the blonde hair, saying, because you don't deserve it. Oh, and you do? Retorted Naruto. A loser like you wouldn't understand. I need more power. I need to avenge my clan. As he climbed into his bedroll, he said to him, whatever. Just leave me alone. I want to get some sleep and you should too. Even though Sasuke was furious about this, he also went to bed. Naruto had only been asleep for an hour when he was startled awake by a sudden movement. Kakashi was crouching over him when he groggily opened his eyes. With a tone that was more like an order than anything else, he told him, "We need to talk, Naruto." To speak with him, the one-eyed nin led him a short distance from the camp. Uncertain of the reason behind his agitation, he inquired, "What is it, Kakashi? Sensei? What was the beef?" He set up some traps to keep them safe, caught and prepared dinner. "I know someone has been teaching you outside of our team sessions, that wind jutsu only proves it. Now, who's been teaching you?" he asked him with anger. "Why does it matter so much? Aren't we supposed to be training at every available opportunity and take some initiative? I mean, maybe I've just been putting extra hours into my training and it's showing some results. Don't take me for an idiot, Naruto. How could the dead last improve so much on his own so quickly? That taijutsu looked fairly advanced and I've never seen it before. Futon jutsu are very rare in our village and they would most likely be beyond your means. Now, who is it? Who's been teaching you?" he demanded with greater force and let out some killer intent. "My new neighbor, Ichigo-san. He lets me train with him when we get the chance and we hang out, too," he replied. He was informed that he could deal with Kakashi directly if he had problems with his teachings. To shield Asuma, Anko, and the other individuals who made small contributions from the council and their actions, he wanted to keep them a secret. "I don't want you seeing him or training with him anymore. You are my student, not his," he gave an order. "What? But, he's my friend. If he hadn't been training me, there's a good chance we could have been killed." He growled at Naruto as he made his way back to the camp, saying, "Don't argue with me, that's an order. If I find out that you've been learning from him again, I'll put you on report." Ichigo was overhearing the discussion. It didn't really matter to him now that he knew the copy.nin would be searching for him when they got back. He didn't reveal everything, at least. "When he returns to the village and I submit this report to the elderly man, that jerk will have another surprise in store. I will continue to train Naruto no matter how angry Kakashi Teme becomes." As he formed a small platoon of Kage Bunshin to stand guard while he slept a little, he thought angrily, "If he has a problem with it, he can face me, not bully the kid out of it." The next August 20th morning after waking up, Naruto moved to the nearby stream to wash his face, stretching out any stiffness in his body. He showered, put his equipment away, and took out a ration bar for breakfast. He decided not to do it again after receiving gratitude for preparing dinner the night before. He sat on his stump, looking away from the encampment, while the rest of the team awoke. Kakashi ordered the rest of the team to pack it in and get going, ignoring the fact that he was still a little sore from Naruto from the other day. As Tazuna motioned to someone in a small boat, they approached a sort of mist-covered pier. The shinobi were being watched with suspicion by the ruddy-faced man who was piloting the small craft. He said, "These the ones, Tazuna?" Tazuna gave a nod. The man gave a headshake. As they all got on the boat headed for Wave, he sighed, "I hope this is worth the risk we're running." Ichigo saw the boat scuttling out to Wave, then started to walk across the water to meet the other boat. With the rest of Team 7 following closely behind him, he reflected on the events of this mission thus far and was unimpressed with the copy.nin's impartiality and fairness toward his team. Sasuke left a bad taste in his mouth from the beginning. The child's attitude was poor, to put it mildly. Sakura, who merely followed the Uchiha child mindlessly, wasn't much better. Kakashi was extremely prejudiced and clearly didn't like Naruto. He constantly made fun of him and spoke down to him. The final report would be the cherry on top, he thought as he started to get closer to dry land. Naruto saw something rustling in the bushes and threw a kunai at it as Team 7 piled out of the boat, entered Wave territory, and proceeded on their journey to Tazuna's village. He almost struck a snow-white rabbit, they discovered. Kakashi genuinely believed that Naruto was onto something, even though he would never acknowledge it, but Sakura screamed at him for frightening everyone in that way. He was aware that someone had used the rabbit as a kawarimi because its fur shouldn't have been white in the late summer. They were all on edge when a thick fog suddenly started to roll in and cover the area. Then a huge sword buzzed over their heads and Kakashi flung them all to the ground. A chilly, threatening laugh escaped from the fog. As a figure appeared out of the fog, it taunted, "So many areas to choose from. 8 instant death points. The heart first, or maybe the head." The visible eye of Kakashi widened in recognition. He snarled, "Zabuza Momochi." Zabuza recognized his opponent and roared with laughter. "Sharingan Kakashi. What a small world this is," he said out loud, his tone full of laughter. He was timidly questioned by Sakura, Kakashi, sensei, who is he? He told them, he's Zabuza Momochi, an A-rank criminal from the Mist Village, also known as the Demon of the Mist for killing 100 of his classmates to graduate from the Mist Academy. Sakura went white with fear. "Stay back and guard Tazuna. I'll handle him," The browless missing Nin demanded, "Ah, yes. Such fond memories. But now, let's get down to business. Fork over the old man and you and your brats can walk away." He revealed his Sharingan eye and said, "Sorry, but we've got a job to do." Zabuza sneered in mock gratitude as he prepared his Zanbadu and made a hand seal that thickened the mist, saying, "Oh ho." Resorting to the Sharingan, "Already? I'm honored." All but Kakashi stood frozen in terror as his murderous intent filled the air. He turned to face them and assured them that he would take care of things. The two Junin then engaged in combat, with Kakashi countering Zabuza's use of his water jutsu. Zabuza's decision to send some Mizu Bunshin after Kakashi's team was unexpected. Sasuke and Naruto were being beaten back despite their best efforts to repel the invading water clones. "Goddamn, this is awful. Time for another jutsu, I suppose." Asuma Sensei helped him weave through hand seals for one of the larger wind jutsu he was familiar with, he thought as he performed a few cage bunshin to hold the clones at bay for a few valuable seconds. He let them have it as soon as he realized Sasuke was safe and had several bunshin lined up. He yelled, "Fuuton! Furyuden!" as a huge wind-powered dragon mercilessly tore the offending bunshin to shreds. Both Zabuza and Kakashi paid attention to the jutsu because it was so loud and destructive. When he saw that Kakashi was still preoccupied, he took full advantage of the fact that he was trapped in the water prison jutsu and said, "That brat has some skill, taking down my water clones like that." As more water clones emerged and started attacking his young team, Kakashi watched. Ichigo swore aloud from his perch nearby. As he focused a little, he complained, "That idiot, he should know better than to take his eyes off of his opponent." A blade of wind cut the Bunshin horde in two and stopped the assault in its tracks with a grunt and a sharp thrust of his hand. He returned his focus to the battle and muttered, "There. That should even the odds." He saw that Naruto already had everything under control and was ready to move in to free Kakashi. Naruto devised a plan to free Kakashi without even pondering the origin of that wind blade. To keep Zabuza occupied while he aimed another jutsu directly at him, he created even more cage bunshin and had them hurl everything they owned at him. He chose a water jutsu because there was an abundance of water around him. He yelled, "Sweeten! Suiryuden!" and a water dragon pounded Zabuza. Zabuza disengaged and broke away from the thrown weapons, knowing that if he wanted to keep his arm, he had to release the jutsu. Kakashi moved behind Zabuza and placed a kunai at his throat while he was still attempting to orient himself and figure out how a genin could use two higher-level jutsu without collapsing and tearing his water clones apart. "Game over, Zabuza," he said to the missing Kiri-nin. Three senbon buried themselves in Zabuza's neck before Kakashi could even flinch, sending him tumbling to the ground, dead. The team was greeted by a masked hunter. Nin that emerged from the trees. As he loaded up Zabuza, the masked nin said coolly, "I greatly appreciate that you defeated him and made my job easier." As he vanished with the body, he said to them, "Goodbye." Kakashi collapsed to the ground due to chakra exhaustion shortly after the mystery nin fled. With no useful suggestions from his teammates, Naruto said, "Hey old man. How far is your house from here?" Tazuna gave a nod. "It's not too far from here, only an hour's travel from here, and we're there. I'll lead the way," he said. Naruto looked back at his teammates after nodding and picking up Kakashi. As he hit the trail and headed toward Tazuna's house, he asked them, "You guys coming or what?" Sakura was now quite perplexed. Twice now, Sasuke, the rookie of the year and ostensibly unfailing ninja, had failed where Naruto, the dead last loser and weakling, had succeeded. Additionally, Naruto stopped swooning over her as he once did, choosing instead to ignore her while maintaining his civility. Because she consistently made fun of Naruto and never gave him a fair chance, her inner was always angry with her. Was she always correct? Sasuke was furious. After nearly eliminating the two missed Chunin in a single blow, Naruto now freed Kakashi from the water prison and protected them and the client from the Mizu Bunshins. When that missing nin with the huge sword unleashed his killer intent, Naruto almost soaked himself, but he managed to keep his composure. Throughout it all, Naruto employed 3 high-ranking jutsu that he was unaware of, at least B rank and higher. He grabbed the front of Naruto's shirt as he ran ahead of him and stood in his path. Angrily, he demanded, "Dobi, tell me where you learned those jutsu." It did not impress Naruto. He was kind of expecting Sasuke to have a tantrum like this, and he knew it was coming. "Now's not the time for this, Sasuke. Let me go and let's get to old man Tazuna's place before dark." "Kakashi. Sensei needs to rest," he said with determination. Before Naruto interrupted him, he yelled angrily, "Since when do I take orders from you, Dobi? Tell me now, I need that power. To avenge your family." He gave him the victory. He took his hands off his jacket collar and said to the would-be Avenger, yeah. We know. The people who taught these to me are my friends. You know. That foreign F word that you don't seem to get? Cut it out so we can get to a safe place for the night. Sakura did something strange and stepped in to protect Naruto just as Sasuke was ready to deck him. Naruto's right. This won't solve anything and we need to get Kakashi Sensei to a safe place. We won't stand a chance if we get attacked like that again. Now let's go, she stated clearly. Tazuna, too, had had enough of the attitude of this little prima donna. They left and arrived at his house shortly after dark. Cut it out, kid. The blonde is right. We don't know what else might hit us if we stay here while you piss and moan. Now let's go. Ichigo continued to observe and realized that the hunter. Nin must have somehow been that strange man's accomplice. He had read that the hunters were to take only the head and burn the body on the spot. However, since his goal was to remain near Team 7, he chose not to pursue him. He overheard the small argument and realized Sasuke was starting to cause trouble. He had a really bad attitude and was now attempting to intimidate Naruto in order to get information. He was taken aback when Sakura defended him from her crush. That was totally out of the question, but it got the team going. He located a remote area of forest close to the elderly man's home, where he performed his nightly ritual, set traps, assembled a security team for Cage Bunshin, and rested. Tazuna presented his family to the team. Tsunami, his daughter, was a beautiful woman with a very maternal quality. Her son, Inari, appeared very irritable and brooding. Sakura lay down in a bed that Tsunami provided after dinner and Naruto offered to be the first watcher, reflecting on what had transpired. Did I do the right thing in arguing with Sasuke-kun? She was puzzled. All you did was defend your teammate and agree with a perfectly sensible plan. Your crush wanted to stay there and get into a pissing match that not even Naruto felt like getting into after what had just happened. So yes, you did the right thing, choosing survival over indulging your crush. Inner Sakura argued. She started to scream but was interrupted, saying, what if he doesn't like me anymore after I argued with him? This is all Naruto's. Is said firmly, no, this is not Naruto's fault. He just took command when the chips were down and was trying to get his team to safety. At this rate, he's putting some truth behind his claims of becoming Hokage someday. He's showing the leadership and responsibility that you and Sasuke thought you had, but don't. Don't even think of blaming him for something you yourself did. It's about time that you grew up and faced reality. The whole damsel in distress bit only works when your Prince Charmless actually gives a rat's ass about you. If it weren't for Naruto, we'd be dead right now and the mission would be a failure. Think about that. She snarled while fading back into the recesses of Sakura's thoughts, allowing her host to think. Kakashi awoke the following day and spoke to his group. Although he didn't want to believe it, he was informed that Naruto was in charge of getting him to a secure location so he could heal and assumed command while he was unconscious. After reviewing the events involving the hunter. Nin, he came to the conclusion that Zabuza was still alive and could launch another attack. Silently, Naruto exhaled, damn, I knew it. That part was too loud for Kakashi to ignore. Naruto, care to enlighten us on what you were saying? He tried to explain, but he gave Kakashi a suspicious look. I was reading up in the library during our off time and learned that hunter nins are supposed to dispose of the body on sight and bring back only the head as proof of death. This guy didn't. Furthermore, the weapon he used were senbon. Where those senbon hit, it couldn't have possibly killed him. I read that it's possible to put someone in a death-like state, however, he told his aghast team. The first to get over it was Sasuke. He sneered at the blonde boy, asking, how would an idiot like you know that? At the alleged prodigy, Naruto squinted. He sarcastically said, I can read, Sasuke. My neighbor likes to read and study, and he also lent me some books on stuff like that and it interested me, he clarified. Sakura blurted, Naruto, what's happened to you? You were never like this. Before returning his focus to the team as a whole, he asked her sharply, you think I like being an idiot, Sakura? Do you think I enjoyed throwing on that fake smile to hide how I really felt and thought? Did you ever really know me at all to make that kind of assumption? He told her, his face sad and angry, I thought that since I would be going on missions like this someday, I might as well learn something and possibly save my teammates in the process, like today. He changed the subject and spoke to Kakashi. Kakashi. Sensei, are there any exercises that we can work on while you recover? He asked. Kakashi gave an owlish blink. He dragged himself to his feet and said, I happen to have just the exercise for you all. Follow me. The fact that his student took the initiative to study during his free time and took charge when he was depressed made him feel proud, but he also hated the fact that the student was the last in line and not his best student, Sasuke Uchiha. Additionally, He was upset that Ichigo had returned and was teaching the blonde a variety of helpful skills while Kakashi allowed him to stall. The council gave him very clear instructions. Naruto Uzumaki must be put down. In order for his death to occur on assignment and not appear suspicious, his growth must be stunted. Ichigo was interfering with his mission progress. The group arrived at a clearing with numerous towering trees. Kakashi turned to face his group. Okay, now the exercise I will be teaching you will be to climb trees. Sasuke mocked the instruction. What good will that do? Even the Dobi can do that. The copy.nin gave a headshake. Smirking at their responses, he walked straight up the tree and hung from a thick branch, correcting them. No, I meant without your hands. Naruto wasn't there when he looked again. He asked, "Where's Naruto?" but was interrupted by a higher, up voice. He hung from a branch just above him and looked down at them with a deadpan expression on his face. Looking for me? He asked. After swallowing his surprise, Kakashi made a remark. Well, I can see you're ahead of the curve here, Naruto, but can you do it again? He asked. With a shrug, Naruto strolled up the tree to a higher branch. What now? Ichigo was almost rolling with laughter as he watched Team 7's shocked faces from a nearby tree. It only took a few hours for him to learn that, which he taught him. Before he left, they were actually practicing water walking. When applied correctly, the Cage Bunshin training method was a huge help. Kakashi was quietly stewing. He wasn't supposed to be aware of such things. Hokage. Sama must prevent this Ichigo from meddling and robbing my pupil, he thought angrily. That's enough showing off, Naruto. Get down here, now, he said. Ichigo and Naruto frowned, knowing what was coming. Dropping to the ground, Naruto turned to face his sensei. Why didn't you tell us about your abilities beforehand? You should have told us and taught them to Sasuke, he yelled. Before responding, Naruto gave him a look as though he had grown another head. He responded, obviously not amused by his accusations and obvious partiality. Why should I? Don't think I don't know about the extra training you give Sasuke after you chase me away after our team meetings. I learned all of this in my free time, not from you. He retorted in a caustic manner, watch your tone with me, Genin. What I do after the team meetings is my own business, not yours. He returned his focus to the other members of Team 7. Now, I want the rest of you to give it a shot while Naruto and I go have a little talk, he said. Sakura pondered what had just transpired as she watched the two of them vanish from view. Naruto had shown that he was equally as capable as Sasuke throughout this mission, and he hadn't bothered to speak to her or even glanced at her unless absolutely necessary. Kakashi. Sensei was also behaving strangely. Why would he be so offended if someone took the initiative to learn independently? I gave the impression that Kakashi Sensei had a personal grudge against Naruto. Sakura's inner self was thinking about these facts without her host's knowledge. What's happening here? Why is Kakashi so determined to ignore Naruto in this way and focus solely on Sasuke, who is a jerk? Sasuke was furious that the Dobi had once more demonstrated his superiority. Compared to their academy days, he was almost a different person. He snapped at them all on the day of their team selections, and that enigmatic Junin began to appear around Naruto, seemingly keeping watch over him. On the day of their team test, Sasuke was anxious to possess the power that the tall, blonde man so casually displayed. I desire that power. I need it in order to exact my revenge on my brother. I'll simply force him to divulge his secrets to me through the council. Ichigo silently followed Kakashi and Naruto to listen to their conversation. What he was hearing really didn't sit well with him. Naruto. Why won't you give those jutsu to Sasuke? He needs them a lot more than you do. At first, Naruto remained silent while he dug his finger into his ear. He retorted mockingly, What? I couldn't hear you. My bullshit filter got clogged and I had to clean it out. He gave a severe reprimand, saying, Stop that right now, young man. He added with a hint of desperation, He needs those jutsu more than you. Try to get that neighbor of yours to train him, too. Are you nuts? He hates Sasuke and would rather neuter him with a rusty spoon than have anything to do with him after what happened after you left the day you gave us that test, he was arguing. What do you mean by that? After you left, he tried to slap Sakura for no reason, but Ichigo.san stopped him with a small water blast and cut me loose from the log you left me tied to. Sasuke tried to get him to train him, but he refused. Sasuke threw a tantrum and tried to attack him, only to get stopped cold. Sakura begged him not to hurt Sasuke, so let him go. After he did that, Sasuke thought it would be a good idea to roast us all alive with a Gukaku. Thankfully, Ichigo.san made sure you still even had a team by protecting me and Sakura with a water shield. When the fire died down, Ichigo.san knocked him out and told us both to go home and that he'd take Sasuke to you for punishment, as he said that it wasn't his place to do it. Kakashi swore to himself. Sasuke was fortunate that Ichigo only knocked him out after something like that, even though he had the right to punish him however he saw fit. Attacking a Junin like that, especially one that was unknown, was a very stupid thing to do. He was also fortunate that Ichigo tried to deal with it as lowly as possible and refrained from approaching the Hokage about it. Sasuke, let alone Naruto, had no chance of ever learning his secrets from the blonde man. What will you work on, now? On his way to the clearing, he walked toward a small creek and said nonchalantly, I'm gonna go work on water walking. I was working on it before we took this mission, later. In addition to dedicating himself to his responsibilities of protecting Tazuna and the bridge building team, Naruto trained non-stop for the next few days. Even though it was a little unsteady, he was able to walk on water for the first time. The only unusual thing that occurred was that one night when he dozed off by the creek where he trained and woke up to what might have been the most gorgeous girl he had ever seen hovering over him. Despite his extreme bravado, Naruto struck up a conversation with the girl. My name's Naruto Uzumaki, Nay. Chan, said, Nay. Chan, chuckled at his gratifying welcome. Hello, Naruto-kun. My name is Haku. Haku. Ni-chan, what are you doing out here? Collecting herbs for my precious person. He was hurt pretty badly and I'm trying to help him. Precious person? Someone dear to me. Do you have someone like that, Naruto-kun? He paused to reflect. Some of the people he knew crossed his mind. I thought about Ichigo. I also thought of Takeo and his wife, Sanae, Iruka, Sensei, and the Sandame. In his perspective, his teammates barely made it. Yeah, I do. Before Haku had to leave, they continued their small talk for a short while longer. She was happy to meet Naruto because she had never met anyone like him before. He nearly took on the role of a younger brother to the lonely girl. She felt as though she had known him her entire life after he told her a lot about himself. He was clearly lonely himself, and she could tell that. Outside of training, mealtimes, and assignments, he tended to avoid his team and had come to sleep on Tazuna's roof. He avoided them at all costs because he didn't trust them, particularly Sasuke and Kakashi, but he wasn't impolite about it. Sakura had turned into a wild card of sorts. Sometimes, as he anticipated, she would be outright hostile to him, but other times, she showed him some nurturing, as though she actually cared about him. But it wasn't as nice another night. Though his nightmares were becoming less frequent since Ichigo's arrival and his newfound understanding of an assistance from the Kyuubi aka Sake, he still had a huge nightmare this night. The nightmare was about some of the times he was abused in the orphanage when he was a little child. He was tugging at her chakra in fear, and Sake was doing everything she could from inside her seal to calm him down. Before long, the night was broken by his agonized screams, causing the house's occupants to startle awake. When he realized the rest of the team had woken up and he had to hide once more, Ichigo was already there, attempting to soothe him. He asked Sake to do what she could for him as he withdrew, and she instantly agreed. Despite her desperate attempts to awaken her vessel, the seal largely prevented her from influencing him. She tried to calm him down as best she could, then soothed him to prevent the nightmares. Reaching out with his senses, Kakashi picked up a subtle hint of the aura of the Kyuubi. Is there a breach in the seal? As he hurried to the rooftop, he thought in a panic. Following closely behind him, the rest of Team 7 and Tazuna were met with a startling scene. Naruto was surrounded by a blood-red haze, yelling and convulsing as if he were in excruciating pain. He had deepened whisker marks, wild hair, and what looked like fangs and claws. Sakura and Tazuna wanted to move forward to get a better look, but Kakashi stopped them. No, don't get too close to him right now. Wait for it to die down, then we could possibly do something about this, he said. Sasuke observed his teammate's condition with a kind of twisted fascination. He had previously witnessed Naruto's crimson aura and the power it bestowed upon him. The raw power was rushing out of him in waves, and he could feel it. Why does he possess this power while I do not? Sake was starting to manage to calm her ship down inside the seal. She clung to him as tightly as she possibly could. The fog surrounding him gradually cleared, and he ceased to scream and convulse. Even though he wasn't conscious at the time, he started to cry aloud, something he hadn't done in just over half of his life. Ichigo refrained from hurrying to Naruto's aid as he observed from a nearby tree. He had to watch how Kakashi would respond and how the team handled this. In his sleep, Naruto moaned and sobbed in agony, tears streaming from his closed eyes. No. I've been good. Why are you hurting me? I'm not a monster. I don't want to be alone. Sake could not bear to see her vessel in such agony. There wasn't much she could do to help, and this nightmare was far worse than his others. She used all of her strength to throw herself into the seal in a desperate attempt to weaken it somewhat. She took advantage of her chance and allowed her consciousness to permeate the outside world. Beside him, a red aura suddenly came alive, and Kakashi drew the team back. A ghostly figure was seen sitting Caesar next to him with a dejected expression on her face as soon as the flare subsided. Before he saw her features, Kakashi initially believed her to be a ghost. She wore an exquisite kimono, had 9 long fox tails and red fox ears, and long crimson hair and eyes. When he realized who the enigmatic woman was who drew Naruto's head into her lap and started singing a hauntingly lovely lullaby while lovingly caressing his hair, the one-eyed man went pale. Sakura wasn't entirely sure, but Sasuke mimicked his defensive stance. The lovely woman's song and her apparent deep concern for Naruto left the pink-haired girl speechless. After the song ended, Naruto was soundly asleep once more. In the moonlight, the spectral fox woman's eyes gleamed with tears. She kissed him on the forehead and disappeared like a puff of smoke, saying sadly, "My precious little kid. I will protect you from your nightmares and what that foolish village has done to you. I love you, my little Naru-chan." He spoke, and each member of the team responded differently. Tsunami and Tazuna felt pity for the unfortunate boy. Tazuna's perception of Naruto's treatment was fairly accurate, so that explained what he heard. Morbidly, Tsunami pondered what might have happened to the boy to give rise to such terrible nightmares. Kakashi was beginning to regret his previous treatment of Naruto, but he brutally stopped it. He was still upset with Naruto because he thought he had stolen the lives of both his teacher and Rin, his last teammate. He wanted to kill him, but he decided to let it go because the Hokage would ask questions and his team and the client were present. Sasuke was clearly upset. Once more, he was outclassed by Naruto. He couldn't stand the fact that he had a power that was so much greater than his own. Sakura called out to him as he was about to leave the roof, sneering in disgust. With a worried tone, she said, "Sasuke-kun, shouldn't we at least bring a blanket up here for him?" He pivoted and gave her a fierce look. As he leapt from the roof, he growled, "Leave that dobe up here. I couldn't care less about what happens to that loser." With sorrowful shakes of their heads, Tazuna and Tsunami descended from the roof. Before Kakashi could escape, Sakura intervened. "Kakashi. Sensei, who was that woman? Why did she look so much like a fox and why does she seem to care about Naruto so much, of all people?" "I can't tell you, as it's a village secret. The punishment for letting it slip is death. The only people who can tell you are the Sandaime and Naruto himself. I doubt that Naruto would tell anyone about it willingly, though," he said as he fell from the rooftop. Sakura felt split in two. She was torn between her inner and fangirl selves, trying to decide what to do. The inner wanted to learn more about what transpired and whether she could be of any assistance, while the fan girl wanted to follow Sasuke. What the hell could have happened to him? What have we done? So what? That dobe made Sasuke-kun angry with me. He can stay up here and freeze for all I care. Is roared, "That's it, I've had it with you," and hurled herself at the fangirl, quickly subduing her and taking control of her body. She went to find a blanket for the boy who had endured so much suffering now that she was behind the wheel. She returned with a blanket from the bed he was to use and covered him with it. As she descended from the roof to sleep, she sadly told him, "Sorry, but this is the best I can do for now." The next August 26th morning, the following morning arrived in a flash. Today, the rest of Team 7 was supposed to accompany Tazuna to the bridge. Despite observing that Naruto was still unconscious, Kakashi let him rest and sleep. He had heard that drawing demonic chakra could quickly deplete Jinchuriki's strength and be quite taxing. Naruto dragged Sakura and Sasuke out the door despite their complaints that he was being lazy. Zabuza and Haku were preparing to go to Gadu's compound and carry out their agreement with the dishonest businessman to kill Tazuna at all costs. Haku smiled sorrowfully as she recalled the moment she had met Naruto in the forest. She believed that if she had fought and possibly killed him, the short, blonde genin could have become his best friend. Zabuza found Naruto to be somewhat impressive. In fact, the boy had freed his sensei and held him and his clones at bay. Quite impressive for a new genin. But the fat little man wasn't content to simply kill Tazuna. He wanted to take his daughter Tsunami into his slave business and publicly kill his grandson as a warning to anyone who would oppose him, so he sent 2 of his best swordsmen to Tazuna's house. By the time Tazuna and Team 7 arrived at the bridge, the area was covered in a dense fog, and Tazuna's workers were seriously hurt but still alive. A chilly chuckle came from the fog. His team was warned by Kakashi, "Zabuza. He's here." As they positioned themselves, he gave the order, "Sakura, stay with Tazuna. Sasuke, with me." Zabuza commented on Sasuke's trembling while he was busy making fun of Kakashi and his genin. The Uchiha answered, "I'm trembling." With excitement, Haku started to approach Tazuna as he said that, But Sasuke interrupted him and started to square off. Soon after Kunai and Zabuza met, Kakashi and Zabuza started their own little dance. Gatu's men had already reached Tazuna's place and taken Inari and Tsunami prisoner. Amid the chaos, Naruto woke up and went to investigate. He hurried to assist, swiftly eliminating the two mercenaries, but it was insufficient. They fiercely retaliated because they were furious that someone had cut short their enjoyment. Naruto was continuously pushed back and kept on the defensive, demonstrating their proficiency with their blades. With Tsunami and Inari to defend, he was unable to fight to the best of his abilities. Ichigo, who was observing from a distance, made the decision to come out and reveal himself. He threw the mercenary back with a burst of strength and came into view in a blast of water just in time to stop a slash that would have severed Naruto's head. He said calmly, "Uzumaki-san. Are you alright?" to him. Any familiarity would reveal his identity, and he still had to portray an Anbu sent to support their team. A tall, fox, masked Anbu was staring down at Naruto when he turned to look. Astonished, he said, "Why? Yeah, thanks. Why is there an ANBU here?" he pondered. Ichigo nodded before vanishing, only to resurface behind the two thugs as they fell, blood splattering from their throats as he resheathed his blade. "Uzumaki, where is your team?" "They're at the bridge." "Wait a minute, you don't think Zabuza is attacking again, do you?" "Yes, I do." "Let's go." "Right, Anbu-san." Then, in the hopes that they would reach the bridge in time, the two of them ran frantically toward it. Back at the bridge, Sasuke and Haku were at a standstill, and Zabuza and Kakashi were locked in a deadlock. After growing weary of teasing, Haku used her more powerful jutsu. As ice needles formed from the vapor in the air and started to rain down on Sasuke, mercilessly peppering him, he calmly called out, "Hyoton! Sensatsu suisho!" With every moment of the battle that went by, Sasuke's anger increased. The Hunter Nin appeared to be bruising his pride and playing with him. During the battle, he had even used his Sharingan, but it was useless and depleting his chakra. "Get out here and fight me properly, you coward," he yelled. Haku gave a slight sneer. "I thought that this is how shinobi were supposed to fight, using tricks and traps. Not full-scale, 1-on-1 warfare. Surely, your sensei has taught you this since the blonde one is so adept at it since he actually managed to keep Zabuza Sama at bay." Haku responded. A growl of indignation escaped Sasuke. Never compare me to the Dobi. We Uchiha are superior to him, you and everyone else. Ever your master is a weakling compared to me, so spare me your parlor tricks. First I'll kill you, then that Dobi will die. I will be superior," he grumbled. For the first time in years, Haku was angry. As he burned through Hanseal, she snarled under his mask, "Is that so, Uchiha-san?" Zabuza was in far better shape than Kakashi, who was suffering from a variety of cuts and gashes from the two Junin's own blows. Kakashi caught a glimpse of Haku creating more hand seals for a truly evil thing out of the corner of his eye. "Haku's actually gonna use it. Your brat really should learn when to keep his trap shut," Zabuza agreed. As she completed sorting through the seals, Haku was indeed preparing for something significant. Haku exclaimed, "Hyaton Hijutsu! Makio Hyoshou!" as a dome of ice mirrors encircled him and Sasuke. Calmly, he seemed to melt into one of the mirrors and said, "Now Uchiha-san, I am serious." Launching barrage after barrage of Senbon at him, the Hyaton user started to move from mirror to mirror. Even though Sasuke was making every effort to defend himself, he was unable to capture him in time to do so successfully. A huge gust of wind suddenly tore across the bridge, removing the heavy mist and exposing figures. One was tall, wearing a fox mask that looked intimidating, and was dressed as a Konoha Anbu. The second was Naruto, who appeared to be fully recovered and prepared for combat. "Uzumaki, go and help your teammate while I deal with Zabuza Momochi and help your sensei," he spoke clearly. Back at the house, Naruto believed that this Anbu had earned his trust and obeyed orders. "Hi, Anbu-san," he said, creating a few shadow clones to enter the ice dome and search for openings. One of the last things he wanted to see when he arrived was Sasuke transformed into a human pincushion, lying motionless and face down. He experienced a rise in his demonic chakra and hackles. Haku took notice of the newcomer. He asked almost regretfully, "Is this the first time you've seen a friend die?" "This is the life of a shinobi. I do not like to kill, but if my master wishes it, I will kill my own heart to do it and serve him with my life." Naruto snarled, his tone starting to shift. "Shut up." A huge gout of demonic power erupted from him as he screamed, "I never liked Sasuke. I hated him, even But even so, he was my teammate and comrade, you bastard. Ichigo quickly kicked Zabuza away after deflecting a sword blow intended for Kakashi's head while returning with the Junin. So, I have a new playmate. A Konoha Anbu, no less. This might be fun. The masked nin ordered, Hitaki, fall back. I will take it from here. As the copy.nin demanded, what are you doing here? Since the man was a Junin for a reason and would be able to spot an act, he responded firmly, without revealing anything. Hokage. Sama got your message and dispatched me to deal with this. I can deal with this myself. Leave here now. He shot back, almost slicing Zabuza's head in two with an overhead slash, but he was able to block it in time. Hold your tongue and ego until the enemy is silenced. Hitaki. The two separated, assessed one another, and then rushed into one another with a variety of taijutsu and sword strikes. They split up once more after a full minute. He said, with a hint of respect and a nasty gash in his side, hey, you're pretty good with that blade, Anbu.san. You're not bad yourself. Your reputation as one of the 7 swordmen precedes you, Momochi, he responded. Haku was shocked by what she saw when she was back inside the ice dome. What is this boy? This chakra. So strong and angry, she thought frantically. Her senbon were swatted away like toys as she struck out, hoping to defeat Naruto before things worsened. When Kakashi, Zabuza, and Ichigo sensed the Kyuubi chakra outside the dome, they stopped. With a hint of panic, Zabuza exclaimed, what is that? What's going on? Kakashi raised his voice in question, the Kyuubi, is it breaking free? No, I can sense that Uzumaki is still in control. He is now becoming a true Jinchuriki, able to control some of the demon's power. Zabuza was shocked by what he had just heard. He yelled, that blonde brat is a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, unsure of what he had entered into. He was aware of Jinchuriki and understood that playing with them was the closest thing to suicide. They posed a serious threat even if they were only able to control a small portion of their beast's power. Kakashi got up and started to move to try to stop Naruto, but Ichigo stopped him. Let him deal with this on his own, he has his own battle under control, unlike yours. Together with Sakura and Tazuna, they saw a blood-red haze inside the dome and felt the overwhelming power that exploded from it. It was a power neither of them had experienced before. They didn't want to approach the source, so they stayed put. As Naruto kicked the living daylights out of Haku inside the dome, he finally smashed him through one of his mirrors, disrupting the jutsu and then breaking the other mirrors. In a fit of wrath, Naruto continued to rain blows on the now defenseless Haku, making her appear as if she had been mauled. Finally, he punched him in the heart to end it. His face mask broke and dropped, exposing a face the young blonde was all too familiar with. He stared in horror, letting go of his anger. It was Haku's lovely face. With a sorrowful smile, she said to Naruto, Naru. To Kun. This is how. It was meant to be. You did nothing wrong. No. This feels so wrong. As life dwindled from her eyes, Haku told him, Naruto. Kun. You only did this to avenge one of your precious people. I'm glad that I got to know you. With tears in his eyes, he closed Haku's for her and said, I'm glad too, Haku. Sakura rushed past him in order to reach Sasuke, whom she was sobbing for. She screamed, Sasuke. Over his body. Naruto felt awful, but he couldn't really help because he was too numb from his own problems. The sound of clapping came from the opposite side of the bridge before anyone could move or take any further action. Gato and his small army of thugs were standing there. Bravo. Thanks for killing that brat and saving me the trouble, kid. She broke my arm, so death would have been the least of her worries. I would have made use of her until there was nothing left, he sighed as he kicked Haku's. Naruto roared, you bastard, before the Anbu nin stopped him in his tracks. Calmly but firmly, he gave the order, Uzumaki, calm down. What are doing here, Gato? Zabuza growled as he turned to face the obese man. I told you I'd do the job. Why pay you when I could just have them weaken you and then kill you all? I could keep my money and head over your head to the Mizukage for your bounty. He stated this with a cruel grin. He turned to the Konoha ninja and growled, so, you were going to betray us all along, you little pig. Man. I should have just killed you. With his Kabikari Haucho ready, he faced the small mercenary army and said, Anbu.san, Hitaki. The old man is safe from me. You're not my enemy anymore. Behind his mask, Ichigo let out a sigh. Very well, Kijin no Kiri. Uzumaki, Hitaki. Back away, this is his fight now. They obeyed, and the severely injured Zabuza shot into the crowd of men. He fought like a demon, a man possessed. However, because he was suffering fatal injuries, he was ultimately still mortal. He made it to Gato after tearing through the crowd. He relieved Gato's shoulders of his head with his remaining strength and fell to the ground in a heap of blood. The thugs were furious. "He killed our meal ticket. Let's raid the village and take it all," they were shouting. "This is not good." Ichigo began to gather as much wind and water as he could around the crowd, thinking, "I have no choice but to use it." He was glowing a soft blue as he worked, which demonstrated his concentration. He let it all go when he had had enough. In a bloody and violent display, wind and water dragons literally started to rain down on them, tearing and shredding them all. Only a handful of the dragons remained alive when the last one fell. As he sped over to them and let go of his viper blade, he remarked, "Looks like I missed a few, easily correctable." As he slaughtered the remaining ones, one lash ripped two in half with unsettling ease. It was over after 2 slashes. Inari arrived with the locals. Armed with axes, pitchforks, crossbows, and other weapons, they appeared prepared for battle. Ichigo looked over at them. With a sheepish tone and a little laugh, he said, "Sorry, but you're a little late to the party." As he walked to where Zabuza lay, he remarked haltingly, "Looks like I overdid it a bit." That was too loud for Naruto to ignore. "A little bit? That was little for you. I'd hate to see what you'd consider overkill," he yelled. Kakashi felt the same way. He had never seen anyone with such a strong command of water or wind. "I thought he owned the 2 elements and could control them. I am unable to replicate this. How on earth is he doing this?" As he shielded his Sharingan eye to preserve chakra, he thought, "Who is he? He had never been seen or heard before. When we return, I will need to ask the Hokage about this." As his time ran out, Zabuza pleaded with him, "Hey, Anbu-san. Could you carry me over to where Haku is?" Ichigo granted his request with a solemn nod. After carrying Zabuza to the girl's body, he placed him next to her. He turned to the girl he believed to be his daughter and said, "Thank you," to the masked blonde. As he looked at Ichigo once more, he said painfully, "I'm sorry, Haku. I should have done better. You deserved better. I hope that you don't go where I'm going and that you'll be happy there. Good. Bye. I have one final request. I'd like to see the face of the one who avenged me." He opened up to him. Ichigo pulled his mask off just enough to reveal his face to the dying man, and nodded his head. Knowing that the Anbu had granted him the unique privilege of seeing his face, Zabuza grinned proudly at him and died wearing the same expression himself. Ichigo closed his eyes for the last time, and Naruto stood aside, bowing his head in remembrance of the dead. Slowly, he got to his feet, holding his hands in front of him while the water gathered around him. The bodies of the thugs and the majority of the blood were washed away when a tiny tidal wave suddenly crashed over the bridge. He turned to Team 7 and said, "There, clean up mostly done." He went to check on Sasuke as he lay there. He carefully removed the nearly hysterical Sakura from the boy and removed the senbon from his neck, bringing him back to consciousness almost instantly because he knew the boy was still alive. "He'll live. He got off easy compared to your teammate, who did the brunt of the fighting and took the opponent down. Why haven't you checked on him yet?" he asked. Sakura attempted to justify her behavior but was unable to do so because her inner was mercilessly destroying the self, serving justifications of her other persona. He sighed, made 2 Kage Bunshin, and turned to face the other members of the party after she failed to respond. He instructed it to escort the team, the client, and his family to their home and wait for him, saying, "Kakashi, order your team to the client's residence to regroup and recover from their fatigue and wounds." As he and the other clone went to properly bury the bodies, he concluded, "I will take care of the bodies of Momochi and his apprentice." Naruto leapt up beside him. "Could I go with you? To help bury them, I mean. Haku was just like me, and I killed her. I feel like I owe her this much," he sadly asked the tall Anbu. He turned to face Kakashi and saw that he was unaffected by that choice, or perhaps more accurately, that he was too preoccupied with the Uchiha to give a damn. "Okay. Follow me, Uzumaki. We'll bury them on the bluffs overlooking the bridge," he stated. Sakura watched the two of them with conflicted feelings as they left with the bodies, her 2 selves still vying for control inside of her. Since Naruto did do the majority of the fighting and defeat a formidable opponent, she worried about him and wondered if he was handling his first kill well. The same group was also curious about the identity of the Anbu that rescued their sensei and their group, as well as what that red chakra was. If he was able to eliminate that many mercenaries with a single blow, he was extremely powerful. Tragically, her fangirl persona continued to rave about how Naruto had turned into a murderer and had robbed Sasuke of his victory, but she was afraid of the Anbu because she believed it to be a monster for ruthlessly killing so many people. Naruto and Kitsune had just finished burying Zabuza on the cliffs, setting his Zanbatsu into the earth to serve as a headstone. They noticed that Haku was moving just a little bit as they reached for her. Naruto's gaze widened. His cry was, "Haku! Chan!" as he called Sake. His plea to the fox demon was, "Sake, can you help her? Please?" He was prepared to go to any lengths to save her because she was one of his first friends of his own age. Sake felt her wan life force and reached out. "Naru-chan, I can't promise you anything, but I'll try. Place your palm over her heart and I'll do the rest," she said. Naruto obeyed, allowing Saki's red chakra to enter the body of the almost dead girl. Her breathing steadied, and color gradually returned to her cheeks. Ichigo looked on in wonder. Saki's power never ceased to amaze him, even though he knew exactly what was happening. The fact that this girl was being given another chance at life pleased him. Naruto told him that he almost thought of her as a big sister because she seemed to be very kind. But when he considered how to explain this to the Hokage, he hesitated. How am I going to get the old man to spin this? As his brows furrowed, he thought. I'm going to have to play this by ear. I simply need to exercise caution. I fear that the council will try to whore her out to the Uchiha if word of her unknown bloodline reaches the wrong people before I put safeguards in place. For both her and Naruto's Sake, I cannot and will not allow that to occur, he continued. He was already aware that Kakashi and Sasuke would need to be closely monitored, and if they threatened to hurt her or Naruto in any way, he would deal with it himself before giving them to Anko and Ibiki when they returned. Just relieved that Haku was still alive, Naruto was holding on to her for dear life. He sobbed into her battle kimono, saying, "Haku! Ni-chan!" He was crying, and Haku was still trying to get the cobwebs out of her head. Her breath left her. "I'm not dead?" she said. He gave her a cheerful, "No, you're not Haku, Ni-chan," comment. She glanced anxiously at the tall Anbu beside him, but something about his aura made her feel much more at ease. "Don't worry, Haku-san. I will not harm you. I wish to extend to you an invitation to join Konoha, since you were never a registered kunoichi and you have no allegiances. I will bring you before the Hokage personally and will make sure that no harm befalls you," he said gently with a bow. Naruto and Haku both found it hard to believe. Naruto was astounded that this Anbu was being so kind, and Haku was incredulous that the answer to her issue had been presented to her. He had treated him like a human being and had been friendly. This Anbu member once more assisted him when his new loved one moved into his village. All of the news, both positive and negative, had Haku's head spinning. The good news was that Wave Country and Zabuza were no longer under Gadu's control. After killing the despotic businessman herself, Zabuza was granted safe entry into Fire Country and even an invitation to join the Konoha shinobi. She had lost Zabuza, though. But at least she knew that Zabuza loved her as if she were his own daughter, and she was glad that the tall Anbu had taken revenge on him before her. Soon after, she and Naruto collapsed from exhaustion. With a sigh, Kitsune gathered the two children in his arms and headed out of the area in a water cyclone, headed for Tazuna's house. After 2 weeks, September 8th, 2 weeks have passed since the completion of Tazuna's bridge, and Team 7 departed soon after the commissioning ceremony. The Spectre Tazuna saw consoling Naruto on the roof of his house that night inspired him to name his new creation the Great Kitsune Bridge. Sakura watched them, Kakashi trained Sasuke, and Naruto was left alone during the 2 weeks of peace. Most of the time, he trained alone or took care of Haku, who was still too sick to be out and about. He had to protect her from Sasuke and Kakashi on multiple occasions. After his new Anbu friend asserted his authority over them and informed them that she was under his protection because she was scheduled to appear before the Hokage as a potential recruit, they thankfully stopped harassing her. Tsunami and Tazuna were much more sympathetic to the young woman's situation. She was paid to perform a job. It had nothing to do with her personal life. In addition, Inari adapted to her role as an older sister figure nearly as fast as Naruto did, and Tsunami thought she was a really nice girl who could cook. Ichigo was dissatisfied with Kakashi's training methods, or rather, the absence of them. He made the snap decision to challenge Hitaki's team. Related training approach and give him an opportunity to improve. "Hitaki, why do you not include young Uzumaki or Miss Haruno in on your training? Surely he could benefit from some extra instruction from you," he made the point. The mention of training the boy caused Kakashi to become irritated. "I need to focus on Sasuke now that his Sharingan has awakened. Naruto would only be in the way and he doesn't have the talent for my training, anyway. Sakura is fine right where she is. I only need her for Sasuke's morale, anyway. That is why I wanted her." He was nearly infuriated by this response, but he was able to control his temper. Why throw away the student who saved your skin and helped make this mission a success? He shows signs of promise and potential as well. Not many genin, if any, could have done what he did, he said. Kakashi's expression hardened. I will train my team as I see fit. The Uzumaki was the dead last of his class, nothing but an embarrassing failure. Besides, I didn't want him on this team to begin with, he replied sternly. Ichigo heard everything and was aware that Naruto was close by. All he said before vanishing in a tiny water cyclone was, so be it. He appeared beside Naruto. I trust you heard everything? All Naruto could do was nod while clenching his fists until he was spitting blood. He responded by saying the name in a falsetto that mimicked the way all of those hormone-driven fangirls from back home and here said it. I knew it. That bastard, he only cares about everyone's precious Sasuke-kun. He chewed me out when I beat those two missing nin on the way here. Then, he tried to force me to give that brooding turd all my jutsu that I worked hard to learn. Now, he's mad at me for beating somebody that kicked his Royal Highness's ass. He won't teach me anything like a sensei should. Instead, he ignores me except to yell at me or scold me for something. He finished with a sad face. Ichigo's anger was nearly exploding. He considered it an unforgivable act of betrayal when a sensei abandoned his student. Then he realized. Even in this disguise, he could continue to train the boy. His offer was enthusiastically accepted by the young blonde. Naruto-kun, how would you like it if I were to train you, if only for a little while? I could teach you how to handle a weapon if you wished. Ichigo gave Naruto the kodachi that was sheathed on his lower back and trained him in the use of a short blade over the course of the following 2 weeks. And the boy wasn't exactly a slouch with it. His terrible grades were partially explained by the fact that he was always a more kinesthetic learner. One who learned by doing rather than just by theory. Haku began teaching him how to throw senbon like her and helped him learn a few more chakra control exercises. It was much easier for her to teach him because she shared Kitsune's perception that he learned by doing. Main gates of Konoha, September 9th 8:34 hours because they could now pass through the trees. Especially since Haku was well enough to travel, the team arrived in Konoha much faster than they did in Wave. By the following morning, they had arrived at the village gates, and the exhausted group ascended to the Hokage's office to submit their report. The short blade that Kitsune had given Naruto was still holstered in the same spot as his Anbu companion. He practiced drawing his new blade quickly the entire way back, which felt strangely instinctive to him. The entire way back, Sasuke was wallowing in his anger and glaring hatefully at Naruto and Haku. He was informed that Naruto easily defeated the hunter.nin. He was even more incensed that Haku had only intended to incapacitate rather than kill. He appeared weak as a result. Even worse, Haku was a girl, whom he considered to be both weak and a potential source of offspring. Ichigo accompanied them into the Hokage's office while still using his Anbu alias because he still needed to file a report and a surprise. He made a cage bunshin in secret and dispatched it to deliver his report to the Hokage. In addition to his report, he asked Inoichi Yamanaka to be available to examine memories and serve as a lie detector because, as much as he wanted to beat Kakashi's head in and let his corpse rot, he had to be smart about this for the sake of Naruto and Haku. Kakashi asked for permission to enter by knocking on the door. Sarutobi called from his desk, Team 7, Kitsune. Please enter and make your reports. The previously mentioned individuals filed into the room to be debriefed by the Hokage. After being informed of the actual events, Sarutobi made arrangements for Inoichi to attend the debriefing. He was also informed about Haku's unique skills, which were somewhat similar to his own, with the exception that he didn't require hand seals, whereas Haku did. Ichigo also cautioned him against telling the council about her because he could already foresee their plan to marry her off to the Uchiha. In order to better shield her from the vultures that sat on the council, he asked to take her in his ward. To Kakashi's surprise, Kaharu Utatane and Homura Mitokado, the Hokage's 2 advisors, were present. He guessed that since it was Sasuke's first mission outside the village, they would want to hear about it directly, even though normally they wouldn't be present. He took charge and informed them that Naruto was a discipline issue who only obstructed the mission, while Sasuke had saved it. Sakura, or Inner Sakura more precisely, watched in utter disgust at the man who dared to call himself a sensei. She was aware of the reality. She would feel more comfortable going on a mission with Naruto because he was a dependable shinobi who repeatedly saved their lives during that mission. With a self-satisfied smile, Sasuke watched as Naruto tried his hardest to keep a composed and businesslike demeanor and refrain from accusing Kakashi of lying. He was confident that Sakura would remain silent and that Kakashi would give him the credit for everything. She was finally useful for something, he told himself. At the moment, Naruto was furious with Kakashi. He sent his alleged teammates outside because he knew Kakashi would try to make a problem out of his use of Saki's chakra. The old man and his advisors were informed by the Cycloptic Junin that he was a threat to his team and should no longer be present. Haku was so angry that waves of rage were evaporating from her. When the conceited Uchiha was the first to fall, she knew that one-eyed jackass was lying and portraying him as a fucking war hero. The ostensibly superior genin was easily defeated by Zabuza after a disastrous performance. It was me that Kakashi was disparaging and demeaning, which prevented her and his team from dying. Kitsune listened to the report while standing next to Naruto in complete silence. He could feel Naruto's tension rising, so he put a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder to soothe him and reassure him that everything would work out in due time. He forced a frown beneath his mask. "You one-eyed bastard, just wait." With a sly grin, he thought, "I have a surprise for you that will really shake things up." Kakashi concluded his report with the words, "And that is all." Sarutobi rubbed his eyes and let out a deep sigh. He was already aware of Kakashi's deceit. A partial report on Kakashi's behavior had already been returned by Kitsune, and the complete report was just sent back a few hours ago. This was already a huge letdown for the Cycloptic Junin. The responses of advisors also greatly irritated the Sandaime. Despite reading Ichigo's report, they didn't think it was true. With narrowed eyes, the elderly shinobi asked him, "Do you have anything else to add?" Boredom gripped Kakashi as he pulled out his Icha book and started reading. With a tone that matched his boredom, he answered, "Yes, I do. I would like to know just who this Anbu is. He took control of my team and criticized my training methods, taking Naruto off to the side and giving him a bit of weapons training and gave him a weapon that I never approved of. On top of that, he protected an enemy shinobi who was thought to be dead." Naruto and his new sister figure caught the Hokage's attention. As he asked said shinobi to take him there, he said to the two, "Naruto-kun, Haku-chan, could you wait in the Junin lounge until I call for you? I'll have Genma escort you there." One of the Junin who genuinely liked Naruto and recognized him for who he truly was Genma Shiranui. He grinned and said to Naruto, "Okay kids, let's go. By the way, nice blade you've got there, Naruto." As he made his way to the Junin lounge, Naruto glanced at Kitsune, who nodded. He asked Kitsune to stand next to his desk, facing Kakashi, as soon as they were gone. As he called for Inoichi Yamanaka and Anko Midarashi to enter, he said, "Now, Kakashi Hitaki. We will see what you have been hiding from us." Both of them gave the copy.nin a death glare that could melt steel. Kakashi almost suffered a heart attack as a result of this. Here in this office were two of the most well-known interrogators in the world, eager to extract some answers from him. He made an effort to remain unconcerned, but it was getting harder and harder every second as his panic increased, particularly when Anko cracked her knuckles and flashed one of her most menacing smiles. "Anko and Inoichi are here to see just how much of the truth you told us, Kakashi. Your past track record has left doubts as to how you handle Naruto's safety and well-being, so I had Kitsune here tail your team for the entirety of the mission, intervening only when the situation was dire. He was ordered to submit his own report and I must say that I am very disappointed. Now, sit down in that chair. Inoichi and Anko will observe your memories and give their professional opinions on how to interpret what they find," he said as he gave Inoichi the order to start. Junin Lounge Hokage Tower. Naruto and Haku waited for the call to return to the Hokage's office while sitting on one of the sofas in the Junin Lounge. Haku wanted to know whether his use of the red chakra was the reason he was so despised by his sensei and team. She dared to say, "Oto-kun, I have a small question for you." He ate a biscuit that was available in the lounge and said, Sure nay, Chan, fire away." She needed to know, even though she knew it would be a delicate topic. "What was that red chakra you used to fight me on the bridge? I felt the same chakra when you revived me on the bluffs. Is it some sort Kekkei Genkai?" she asked quietly. Unexpectedly, Naruto almost choked on the candy he was consuming. He was in a panic because he wasn't sure how she would react to him sharing his secret. He would lose his mind if she began to despise him as everyone else did. She had already seen him in his tailed beast state, so she knew something was wrong, but she didn't seem to mind at all, he realized as he indulged in self-pity for a moment. Here's hoping. He speculated that he might be able to tell her. Warts and all, he told her his story after clearing his throat. Haku carefully considered what she had been told. Although her heart told her that he was a very good-hearted boy with a terrible burden on his shoulders, her logic told her that he was incredibly dangerous. She also appeared to be very kind, based on what she had learned about the Kyuubi. After all, it was the Kyuubi that allowed her to survive. Naruto was quite anxious about her reaction. He sat with his eyes screwed shut on the sofa, waiting for her to answer. He was expecting her to yell at him or strike him, so when she gave him a gentle embrace, he was completely taken aback. "Your life has been harsh, but you've grown up just fine so far. I'd love to be part of your life, my Tuto," she whispered to him. Naruto exhaled a sigh of relief and released the breath he had been holding in. He said to her, "Thanks, sis. That means a lot, you know?" During their remaining time together in the Junin Lounge, Naruto filled her in on the specifics of his life, including his friends and acquaintances. He even told her about Hinata Hyuga, the girl he used to like and who he now kind of likes. Haku's newly acquired big sister instinct made her laugh. "So, Naru-chan, this girl you like, could you introduce us? I think I'd like to get to know her." She laughed. In addition, the 15-year-old girl wanted to meet everyone who had supported her new younger brother, particularly Ichigo, Anko, and the Ichiraku family. She wanted to express her gratitude to these individuals, who were among those who influenced his life. Genma and his longtime friend Rado Namiyashi observed the two smiling as they joked back and forth from the doorway. Genma remarked, "They really do seem like siblings, close ones at that." Rado gave a small laugh. "Yeah, they do. The kid deserves it after all this village has put him through." Hokage's office. Hokage Tower. It had been an hour since Inoichi's plunge into Kakashi's mind. Kitsune was a little thoughtful himself, bouncing on his toes a little to keep his feet from dozing off, and Anko was beginning to become restless. Sarutobi had a calculating look on his face as he observed his two former teammates. He was aware that they were working on something, but he was unsure what it was yet. But he was happy that Ichigo had made him watch out for the council. When Inoichi's body began to twitch, he opened his eyes and blinked slowly to regain focus. He swiveled to give Kakashi a glare. He growled, "You thieving bastard." Sarutobi was captivated by this response. He questioned the mind jutsu expert, Inoichi, "What did you see?" The Yamanaka patriarch presented his findings while turning to the other room occupants. Everything mentioned in Anbu operative Kitsune's reports are 100% accurate. Kakashi Hitaki has been lying to us. He intentionally stunted Naruto Uzumaki's growth as per the orders of someone on the council, although who we do not know, so that his death will come while out on a mission while giving Sasuke Uchiha all of his jutsu and skills, including ones that he stole from our own shinobi, trying to force Naruto to do the same. Furthermore, I did some digging around and found some memories of his days on the Naruto Protection Squad some years back and found that he and his team intentionally lead the boy into ambushes and only jumped in when Naruto was just a hair away from death. He growled with rage. With a growl, Anko turned to face the copy.nin and gave him a powerful punch. Her eyes were honey-colored, and she roared, "You son of a bitch," with angry tears in them. He doubled over as the snake mistress, still not finished with him, grabbed him by the collar of his vest and punched him in the stomach. "How dare you do that to a Naruto, let alone any child? How dare you abandon your other students just to suck up to that little shit stain Uchiha? You're lucky you're not under an official interrogation, otherwise I'd make you into my special project and practice my nastiest techniques on you, regardless of how much you squeal." She yelled at him as she returned to where Kitsune, Inoichi, and Sarutobi were. Inoichi was well aware of the reasons behind Anko's anger toward Kakashi. She considered Naruto to be a baby brother of sorts, a kindred spirit. She took her role as a member of Naruto's protection squad very seriously. When the council removed her from the detail and replaced her with Kakashi, she was on the verge of tears. She was forced to watch as he was repeatedly mistreated. Being able to watch over his last surviving descendant made Ichigo very happy. Like the other idiots in this village, this vile bastard blamed the child for all of his troubles and was planning to have Naruto killed on a mission simply because some elitist jerk on the council ordered him to. Sarutobi sat in his chair, fuming over Kakashi's actions. To give his decision, he stood to his full height, quite tall for his age. "Kakashi Hitaki, you have just been proven guilty of falsifying an official mission report, blatant favoritism, and malicious conduct unbecoming a shinobi of your current status. You are hereby relieved as the Junin sensei of Team 7. You are also forbidden from interfering with their new sensei and his or her training methods. In fact, I already have one in mind," he said as he turned toward Kitsune. "Kitsune, would you please go to the Junin Lounge and retrieve Naruto-kun and Haku-chan? Also, please tell Sasuke and Sakura to come back in, as well." He nodded and disappeared in a little cyclone of water. He saw that the rest of Team 7 was also there when he arrived a few moments later in the same manner, accompanied by Naruto and Haku. The team was addressed by the elderly Hokage. "Team 7, due to your sensei's inability to teach fairly and tell the truth, he has been relieved as your Junin sensei," he made a statement. Everyone on Team 7 was shocked by the deck, but their opinions were different. Sasuke laughed. He thought the council would simply order the new sensei to continue where the Kakashi left off, since he felt the Kakashi was disposable. Sakura was divided on 2 points of view. As long as Sasuke remained on her side, her fangirl persona didn't care. But Sakura's inner self was dancing with happiness. She thought Kakashi received his just desserts. Inside, Naruto was also performing a small victory dance. He didn't consider Kakashi to be much of a sensei. Other than yelling at him, he never offered him support, explained anything to him, or even engaged in conversation. The one-eyed pervert finally received what he deserved, and he was happy about it. Both elders were sputtering unintelligibly. Homura nodded in agreement as Kaharu yelled, "Hiruzen, this is outrageous. Hitaki is the only one who can teach Uchiha Sama how to use the Sharingan. We demand that he be reinstated as the sensei at once." Sarutobi was furious. Over the years, these two have become more and more conceited, consistently going beyond their authority and endangering Naruto's life with their decisions and demands. It was enough. He asked, his composure barely maintained, "Kaharu, Homura, tell me, out of all the people in this room, who is the Hokage?" They exchanged perplexed glances. Homura insisted, "Why, you are, of course. What are you getting at?" Before changing gears, he responded, "Correct." His killing intent seemed inhuman at the moment, but Kitsune, tall and unwavering, was the only one who was unaffected. "I am the Hokage. You two are advisors. You advise, you are not in a position to demand anything. My decision is final, so leave now," he roared. Kakashi sank into his chair for a moment to rest before carrying on where he left off, and the two advisors fled the office in terror. He turned to face the Anbu in the room and said, "As I was saying, I have your new sensei already lined up and he is currently in this room." He commanded, "Kitsune, come forward and remove your mask." Kitsune gave a nod. "Hi, Hokage Sama." Everyone in the room was astounded when Kitsune gradually took off his mask and revealed who he really was. The first to recover was Naruto. Ichigo-san? Kitsune was really you?" Ichigo chuckled despite his wince at the boy's volume. As if it were the most commonplace thing in the world, he stretched his arms and said merrily, "Yep, that was me, all right. Man, it felt good to cut loose a little bit back at the bridge. I needed the anger relief." His fox-like grin was uncannily similar to Naruto's. Next was Haku. She remarked admiringly, "So, you are the Ichigo that Naru-chan told me about." She smiled softly and said to him, "You know, he holds you in the highest regard, and I can see why." Sasuke had a big smile on his face. Instead of learning the man's secrets, he could simply steal them now that his Sharingan was activated. Sakura was caught between fascination and sheer terror. The seemingly carefree Junin frightened the fangirl side, but inner Sakura was almost attracted to him out of admiration and respect for his skills. IS chirped joyfully, "I can't wait to see what kind of sensei he turns out to be." FG screamed and moaned until IS silenced her, saying, "That homicidal maniac is our new sensei. What if he tried to hurt Sasuke-kun?" "Quiet. We'll actually learn something from this guy, not like that no-load Hitaki. He just used us as that stupid Uchiha's cheering section. But I liked watching Sasuke-kun train. That attitude nearly got us killed. Naruto-kun offered to let us train with him, but you dumbass, turned it down, saying that Sasuke-kun doesn't like sweaty girls. That was total bullshit." Anko approached Ichigo as her inner selves engaged in the next shinobi battle within her mind. Playfully, she reprimanded him, saying, "You had me worried, Buster." He explained sheepishly, "Sorry, Anko-chan. I had to leave kind of suddenly and I wasn't allowed to tell anyone." Anko gave a small laugh. In a somewhat husky voice, he said, "I'll forgive you, if you take me out to dinner tonight." Ichigo let out a defeated sigh. He was aware that they were getting close, but he also understood that Shino wouldn't want him to linger in his misery forever, so this was the next step. She would probably kick his ass for doing that, in fact. Before leaving the tower, he made a note to draw his mission pay because he knew exactly where she wanted to go. He would require it. Then, he sighed, "Fine, Dango Feast it is." Then, already, he could feel his wallet screaming in pain. To his surprise, Anko gave him a peculiar look. She blushed a little and said, "Who said anything about Dango? I'd actually like to go to a real restaurant. You know, the whole dress up and go out thing?" Inoichi and Sarutobi grinned at her timidity. My. Our resident T and I mistress, who can make S-ranked criminal crap themselves in fear." Blushing like a schoolgirl, the older blonde laughed. "Oh, shut up." She crossed her arms and sighed. "So what if I want to act like a normal girl for once?" Ichigo's face changed from astonishment to a broad smile. He bowed and took her hand, saying in jest, "Hey, ask and ye shall receive, my lady." He suggested, "How about 6 o'clock p.m. tonight at Dagashi's?" He knew everything he needed to know from her smile. As she and Inoichi left, he winked at her and said, "Right. I'll pick you up at 6 sharp, Anko-chan." For a moment, Inoichi paused to speak with the younger blonde. He gave him a gentle prod in the side and whispered, "Hey kid, stop by my flower shop before you pick her up. Akari is going to want to hook you up for your first date." Sarutobi said to Ichigo, "What should we do about young Miss Momochi next?" A brief summary of her skills and his approximate assessment of them were given to the elderly Hokage. Her ninjutsu and control are around high chunin, bordering on special junin. Her taijutsu is mid chunin, as she was easily able to keep up with Sasuke, who had his Sharingan active during the fight, but her speed is at least special junin. She didn't seem to use any genjutsu, so I can't give you an estimation there, he clarified. After giving it some thought, Sarutobi responded, "We'll have to test her out at chunin and work from there. I'll arrange for a skills test next week. Now, Miss Momochi. It has come to my attention that one of my junin would like to sponsor you and take you in as a ward and become your legal guardian," he said with a grin. Haku was surprised that someone was already willing to take her in, but he wasn't sure who it was. She asked him courteously, "Begging your pardon, Hokage Sama, but who is this person?" The elderly man gave a small laugh. He responded, "Why, he's standing right next to you." Ichigo gave her one of his nicer smiles and nodded his head in agreement with what the Hokage had just told her. The adolescent girl sobbed joyfully while throwing her arms around the much taller blonde's waist. She was afraid that if she went to someone, they would either use her as a breeding tool or whore her out. She was relieved that the person who took her into his custody was the one who exacted revenge on her master. She would also be Naruto's neighbor, so they would be close all the time. Sarutobi had paperwork to finish, so he ended the briefing and threw everyone out of his office. "Please make me proud, Ichigo-kun. You will, I'm sure." 12:30 hours Konoha streets after splitting up for the day and drawing their mission pay, Team 7 parted ways. Sakura returned home. Sasuke stalked off to the Uchiha district, and Ichigo, Haku, and Naruto went to Ichiraku's for lunch. When the Ichirakus arrived, they were ecstatic to see that their favorite patrons had returned to town. Tucci laughed heartily from the kitchen as Ayame almost leapt over the counter to embrace her adopted younger brother. As the ramen girl fussed over him like a mother hen, Haku could not help but laugh. "Naru-chan. You're finally back and you're okay. I can't even begin to tell you how worried I was," she said. Her attention was drawn to the giggle. Glancing at Haku, she questioned, "Oh, and who is this Naru-chan?" He exclaimed joyfully, "Her name is Haku. She's sorta like another Chan to me." Before bending closer. Happily, he whispered, "She knows about my tenant and she doesn't care about it." Ayame's eyes widened, and then she embraced Haku. "Thank you, Haku-chan. You have no idea how much this means to us. Now, you've become part of the family." Haku simply grinned broadly. "He's become very precious to me. He's my little Otuto-kun. Actually, he's our little Naru-chan." The conversation continued a little after the ramen hit the table. "So Naru-chan, this Hinata girl that you like, she's that same cute girl you bring here on a regular basis?" Haku responded. Yeah. I like her, but then again, her clan is like one of the most powerful and richest in the village. She's like a princess, being the heiress and all. I don't know what her dad'll do to her if he found out that I liked her." Haku was perplexed, but Ayame explained everything to her. Her gentle brown eyes later glowed with sorrowful comprehension. She whispered, "I see. The princess and the pauper, falling in love." Ichigo then added his voice. In between mouthfuls of his ramen, he told the younger blonde, "Don't worry about her family, kiddo. I'll handle them if it boils down to that. Just go ahead and ask her out officially. We'll back you up. Anko will, too." The head of Naruto jerked upward. "Hey, sensei. What about that date with Anko? Sensei tonight? Don't you have to get ready?" "It's not till 6 tonight. I've still got plenty of time, but after lunch, I need to go speak to Sakura's parents, being her new sensei and all," he said. Tucci and Ayame adopted a pair of cunning smiles. Slapping him on the back, Tucci laughed and said, "A date, huh? With Anko Mitarashi? Good luck, boy." They parted ways, with Ichigo going to speak with the Haruno family and Naruto giving Haku a tour of the village. The remainder of lunch went swiftly. While strolling down Konoha's main street with Haku, Naruto showed her where everything was, and they happened to run into Kiba Inuzuka of all people. He scoffed at him and glared at Haku, saying, "Hey Dobi, who's the hot chick? Your new girlfriend?" His voice was strained as he explained, "Go away, Kiba. I'm just showing Haku.ne around the village. So she's not your girl? Hey, she was too good for a doby like you, anyway. She belongs with a better specimen like me. I'm stronger and better than you, not to mention you're just a stupid orphan that nobody cares about. Haku became enraged after hearing the orphan comment. She was becoming increasingly irritated with this haughty mongrel in front of her. She said, "Excuse me, Kiba-san?" in a sickly sweet voice that hinted at excruciating pain, but he was too hormonally overwhelmed to notice. Despite Naruto's protests, Kiba put his arm around her waist. He cooed, "What is it, babe?" In one lightning, fast motion, Haku grabbed his wrist and twisted it until it broke. "You not only insult my Otuto, but you insult orphans, which I am also, and you proceed to touch me without my permission. I should just kill you where you stand, but it will cause trouble for Naru-kun and Ichigo. Oji-san, I suggest that you leave immediately and trouble us no more," she growled at him as she pushed him away. Kiba clutched his wrist while scowling at the two. "I get you, Doby. Hinata will be mine, too. She's too good to be around trash like you. She belongs to me," he growled as he fled. As the Inuzuka heir fled, Haku gave him a scowl. She complained, then got back up. "The nerve of that chauvinistic jerk," she said. "Shall we go now, Naru-chan?" As they proceeded with their tour, he retorted sourly, Why? Yeah, sure, Haku.ne. They ran into Hinata herself no more than half an hour later, but he could tell by the expression on her face that something was seriously amiss. He questioned the Hyuga heiress, "Hinata-chan, what's the matter? Are you okay?" Naruto.kun. "Is it true? You have a girlfriend and she's pregnant?" She let out a gasp. She buried her face in her hands and choked out, I thought that you liked me." Naruto watched in perplexity and bewilderment until it dawned on him. Set to damage control, he growled, "Kiba. That rat bastard." "Hinata-chan, who told you that?" She replied, Kiba-san did, a few minutes ago. "I was aware of it." Haku growled as she attempted to soothe the sobbing girl, saying, "I should have cut off a limb when I had the chance." She gently explained to the girl, There, Hinata-chan. The Inuzuka told you that vile lie because he was upset that I wouldn't go out with him." Hinata glanced up at the older girl with hope. Is that true?" For the next 20 minutes, Naruto and Haku described their sibling relationship and the events leading up to their meeting. Hinata sighed with relief. "I see, thank you, Haku-san. I was so scared that he was taken away from me before we even had a chance to go out." Naruto stopped. "Why? You mean, you want to go out with me, too?" Hinata gave a little giggle. The pale-eyed girl confessed as she gave him a gentle embrace, "I've wanted to ask you out for a long time now, Naruto.kun. Kurenai. Sensei and Ichigo. Sensei both said that I should give it a try, so here we are." All Naruto could do was smile as broadly as he had ever smiled and give her a tight hug in return, sighing with satisfaction as Haku looked on joyfully. He asked his new girlfriend, "This has been an awesome day already. Say, Hina-chan, you want to go out for some dinner tonight?" "Sure, Naru.kun. Tonight at Dagashia's, 6 p.m. "Hey, that's when Sensei has his date with Anko-san, same place, too." The Hyuga girl chirped happily, "Well then, we'll have company," which caused Naruto to smile. She is no longer the oppressed girl she was. She had been replaced by this upbeat and happy young lady. Because Kurenai, Anko, and Ayame collaborated with her on that matter, she was now much more self-assured. Flashback: she was now in charge of her sister's sparring sessions, demonstrating how her newly discovered confidence translated into her training. Now, when they spar, she gives Neji a hard time. Her father, Hiyashi, was aware of this. Although he was thrilled to see her start to achieve success, he was curious about her source of inspiration. After a training spar one day, he asked her where she got her fire, and she gave him a straightforward response. She confided in the Hyuga patriarch, "It was Naruto, father. He helped me find my confidence, my self-worth. I've never felt so good, so free. It's like, when he's around, I feel complete." Hiyashi had a lot to ponder over this. He made his little girl happy, which was the one thing he had been unable to do since the death of his beloved wife, even though he knew the boy was not well thought of at all. She actually described what his own sweetheart, Hana, told him the day he proposed to her. The Hyuga leader's heart was once frozen, but this broke it free. "My daughter, I know that I have been rather unpleasant to deal with since your mother died. I know that you loved her more than anything and her loss hurt us both so badly. If you wish to date the Uzumaki boy, I shall allow it. Please, accept my blessing as an apology for my deplorable behavior. He saddened his oldest daughter. For the first time in years, Hinata gave her father a tight hug and a cheek kiss. Her bright voice said, "Thank you so much, Odo Sama," as she rushed out of his study. End of flashback. Life was good for now. He now had an official girlfriend, a new big sister who was also a kunoichi, and a very good sensei. Yes, being Naruto Uzumaki at that time was definitely enjoyable.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.